Yuanqi's victory over Wu Guike has shocked the conferred god stage. Now, he faces the simmering hatred of Huanzhi and the scrutiny of every realm. Leave a like and subscribe to witness the next clash. Elder Huanzhi, this young boy, don't tell me that your Ice Phoenix Sect has some sort of secret method, Hu Ruli asked in shock. Sect Master Hu. As soon as Hu Ruli finished his words, he heard the low shout of Yan Juhai. He quickly came to himself and didn't inquire any further. It was absolutely not possible to have such an astonishing increase in cultivation through normal means. The Flame God realm was able to raise Hu Poyun's cultivation up to the late stages of the Divine Spirit realm by precisely using a secret method. And that was why Hu Ruli had asked such a question. But this kind of secret method would be a secret in any sect that had it, and so it was naturally inappropriate to inquire about it. Mu Huanzhi could only shake his head in response, and the look of surprise on his face didn't vanish even after a long while. He had already lived for over 10,000 years, but had still never heard of or read in any records that their sect possessed such a method that could raise the cultivation of a disciple by 7 small realms, even in the divine tribulation realm. The conferred god stage had become boisterous. The most dreaded thing in the cultivation of profound strength was to be greedy for success and advance rashly. But for Yuanqi to be able to advance rashly, to this extent had surprised everyone, including all the realm kings of the upper star realms, raising cultivation by 7 small realms in the divine tribulation realm. Even if he used the time wheel pearl, that would still only give him extra time of 1 month. In the eastern seating area, every great god emperor had a big frown on his face, and a wondering look could be seen in their eyes. It was at this time that the dragon monarch uttered all of a sudden, "It's due to the universe pentajade pellet." Correct. The eternal heaven god emperor also nodded slowly. The aura of the medicine has yet to dissipate from his body. It should be the universe pentajade pellet, without a doubt. Given the ability of the Snow Song Realm King, it would be indeed easy for her to carry out the fusion required for the universe pentajade pellet. It's just that gathering all the materials needed for the pellet would not be an easy matter. However, the dragon monarch continued, a single universe pentajade pellet would absolutely not be able to raise his cultivation so much, even if it was perfectly refined. We cannot underestimate the Snow Song Realm, huh? Ha ha! The Eternal Heaven Realm King began to laugh. My Eternal Heaven has existed for 600,000 years so far, but the Snow Song Realm has a history of over 900,000 years. None of the star realms who have inherited the legacies of gods, or existed for a long period of time in the history of the God realm, don't have their own concealed secrets that are unknown to others. However, the issue with such concealed secrets is that either they require paying an extremely great price in return, or it will be extremely difficult to actually make use of them. So for such a thing to be used for him really doesn't make much sense. No, the dragon monarch slightly shook his head. This junior is likely much more capable than it seems. For him to be able to execute invisibility alone is sufficient to make out this much. This dragon has long heard of the name of the Snow Song Realm King, Mu Xuanian, even when I was in the Western Divine region. For her to accept him as a direct disciple, and also to not hesitate to pay any price for increasing his cultivation to this extent, this child should be absolutely extraordinary. The sudden great increase in his profound strength must be due to the use of some extremely high-level secret medicine or method. Even our glazed light realm would find it extremely difficult to do the same. Who would have thought that a middle star realm would be able to such a thing? Shui Yingyu said in a low voice. Big sis, the girl beside her asked suddenly, have big brother, second brother, third brother, 10th brother, 11th brother, 99th brother opened bets for this fight? No, they didn't. Shui Yingyu glanced at Shui Meiyan. She was surprised to see her suddenly becoming interested in betting. There is not the slightest suspense about the outcome of this fight. Allowing others to place bets would mean that we will only be making a loss. In every session of the Profound God Convention, countless people would offer gambling opportunity. Naturally, the glazed light realm wouldn't abandon such a chance to easily make a great profit, either. Moreover, given the prestige and power of the glazed light realm, people didn't hesitate to place extremely big bets on the contestants. Oh, what a pity! A mysterious and unusual light was circulating in Shui Meiyan's pupils as she looked fixedly at Yuanqi. If everybody placed bets on Luo Chang'an winning the battle, all the 99 big brothers could earn so many profound crystals. A look of surprise surfaced in Shui Yingyu's eyes. Meiyin, you mean to say? That big brother Yuanqi will win, Shui Meiyin said in a very serious tone. Win? Shui Yingyu found her answer incomprehensible. Although his profound strength has increased by a great margin, he is still just at the last stage of the divine tribulation realm. No matter what, it is impossible for him to be the opponent of Luo Chang'an. He, Shui Meiyin laughed. It's not only the strength of his cultivation, the expression in his eyes has also changed completely. On the conferred god stage, the gaze of Honorable Kui stayed on Yuanqi for a few breaths. After feeling astonished, he said in a cold voice, HMPH Yuanqi. Despite the fact that everyone is watching the conferred god battle at this moment, you actually dared to arrive this late. Do you think nothing of this profound god convention? Yuanqi didn't budge an inch, and unexpectedly replied in a carefree manner. It's certainly a bit inappropriate to arrive late for the battle, but according to the rules of the conferred god battle, a contestant would only be determined as loser if they are late by 15 breaths time. If I didn't make any miscalculations, then I should only be late by around 7 breaths time. However, I heard Honorable Kui announcing the result of the battle before the time limit, which should be even more inappropriate, right? You! Honorable Kui lowered his brows as he was almost enraged by him again. His identity was so great that even the king of a star realm would not dare show the slightest disrespect to him. Yuanqi was absolutely one of the few exceptions that he had seen in his life. Thinking of his identity, Honorable Kui instantly suppressed the anger surging within him. As his body floated up in the sky, he roared once again, "It is time for the battle. You two begin at once." Hearing the command of Honorable Kui, the conferred god stage finally regained its calm. But neither of the two people facing each other made any move against their opponent. One was calm and composed, another had an amused look on his face. The change in Yuanqi's profound strength might be astonishing, but he was still at the divine tribulation realm. In the eyes of every person, it was basically impossible for him to pose the slightest threat to Luo Chang'an. Luo Chang'an's eyes were only half opened, as they stared at Yuanqi from top to bottom. There was a vague smile on his face, as if he was sizing up an interesting toy. Not bad. The day before yesterday, you didn't even dare to get on the conferred god stage, and today you actually have the guts to stand up before me. Tusk. Reaching the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm from the 1st level in a day's time, ha 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 ha. Luo Chang'an raised the corner of his mouth as he coldly smiled in disdain. Although I don't know the method you used, even a 3-year-old child knows that the cultivation of the divine way should progress step by step, in a careful manner. I didn't think you would be such a fool. Your profound strength may have increased significantly, but such abrupt amplification would certainly inflict severe damage to your talent and lifespan. You're truly extremely laughable. Even more laughable is, you might be thinking that you're no longer garbage, right? Yuanqi. Luo Chang'an leisurely stretched out a finger towards Yuanqi. Boy, I have always been a soft-hearted person, so I give you a warning out of kindness. It's about to be 20 years since I last fought with those trash below the divine spirit realm. Therefore, it is quite likely that I'll end up overdoing it. If you were to become half dead due to a moment of carelessness on my part, you'd have to lie paralyzed on the bed for 80 to 100 years. Tusk, how pathetic that would look, huh? Since that's the case, I'll grant you an opportunity out of kindness. Luo Chang'an smilingly stretched out 5 fingers. I'll give you 5 breaths time. You surrender voluntarily, get lost from this place forever, and continue to be the lowly garbage you are. That way I will be able to avoid dirtying my hands on garbage such as you. In front of an absolute weakling, Luo Chang'an spouted malicious remarks and ridicule without the slightest bearing that an expert like him was supposed to have, which made a large number of people frown inwardly. The two of them hadn't made any move even after a long while, but Honorable Kui didn't say anything in regards to it. Yuanqi, however, responded with a smile. Luo Chang'an, you use that word garbage over and over again for me. It seems that you truly look down upon the action of conceding or surrendering, huh? Ha ha ha, Luo Chang'an laughed in extreme contempt. True men like me fight to the last moment, even if we die by doing so, as long as we are conscious. Only lowly garbage such as you would beg to surrender like a dog. However, seeing lowly garbage such as you begging to surrender like a dog, it is also a good sort of enjoyment in itself. Therefore, I'm granting you such an opportunity, but you have no more than 5 breaths time. 4, 3, 2, Luo Chang'an folded his 5 fingers one by one, but Yun Qi remained in place. The former didn't see the least bit of nervousness or fear on his face, nor the expression of anger or humiliation. It greatly lessened the feeling of delight in his heart, and his gaze gradually turned sinister too. Folding the last finger, Luo Chang'an smiled. I gave you the opportunity in order to avoid any unforeseen accidents. You will no longer get the chance to regret. As the son of the Holy Eve's realm king, Luo Chang'an was known for his wildly arrogant and domineering attitude. Perhaps it was because his shine was completely suppressed by his younger brother in the family that he quite liked to humiliate the weak. Seeing the other party feeling anger and humiliation, but not daring to resist, made him feel a twisted feeling of pleasure. But today, he didn't get to see a satisfying effect from his words and actions on Yun Qi, which evoked anger in his heart instead. The moment he finished his words, he made his move all of a sudden. As he lifted and thrust out his right arm, the swirl of profound energy in his palm rapidly became dozens of times greater, before shooting towards Yun Qi's heart. Despite the fact that he had absolute superiority of profound strength, not only did he make the first move, his attack was also incomparably ruthless and vicious. If this attack were to hit its target, let alone someone at the 8th level of the Divine Tribulation realm, even a person at the peak of the Divine Tribulation realm would be severely injured in an instant. Yun Qi, everyone from the Snow Song realm, except for Mu Bingyun, turned pale with fright. The audience members from the Holy Eve's realm also had a big frown on their faces. Although Luo Chang'an hadn't used any more than 20% of his strength, his opponent was only at the Divine Tribulation realm. He would get heavily injured at the least, and might even meet a violent death on the spot. The Holy Eve's realm was naturally not afraid of the Snow Song realm, and killing the direct disciple of its realm king was nothing big in their eyes. Even if the Snow Song realm had a Divine Master-level realm king right now, they would absolutely not have the guts to say or do anything to the Holy Eve's realm. But maliciously killing his opponent in this conferred god battle might cause him to lose his qualification to participate any further. However, even if the people of Holy Eve's realm wanted to shout at him to stop, it was already too late. Boom. Yun Qi didn't budge an inch, and it was also certainly difficult to move even a finger under to the suppression of the profound strength that was greater than his by a big realm. Luo Chang'an's attack directly hit Yun Qi's chest. Following an exploding sound, the 50 kilometers area ahead from Yun Qi's original location was drowned in an extremely tyrannical energy. Even mountains would instantly be destroyed down to fine powder. Luo Chang'an had raised the corner of his mouth sideways into a faint evil grin as his attack was about to hit Yun Qi. But very soon his evil grin disappeared completely, as his attack, which had clearly struck Yun Qi, just passed through the air. It was not the scene of Yun Qi getting immediately bombarded out of the conferred god stage that he saw, but an icy image dissipating as it shattered. Luo Chang'an was taken aback, after which he suddenly turned around. Yun Qi still had the same posture as earlier with both of his arms behind his back. He was calmly standing in place, and the distance between them was still less than 10 steps. It's Sect Master's moon-splitting cascade. A few Palace Master-level elders from the Snow Song realm cried out in surprise together. Moon-splitting cascade is so wonderful, it indeed deserves its reputation. In the eastern seating area, the Dragon Monarch surprisingly blurted out in praise. Leaving your aura behind while switching your location to another place, which instantly confuses the perception of your opponent. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor glanced at the Star God Emperor as he said with a smile, "On this point, it is comparable to the Star God's broken shadow of your Star God realm." Although the movement skill of a Middle Star realm was being compared on equal footing with the divine skill of their Star God realm, the Star God Emperor didn't laugh off his words, and instead nodded slightly. It is extremely difficult to comprehend the Star God's broken shadow. Besides the Star Gods, no one else in my Star God realm has been able to practice it successfully. According to what I heard earlier, it was solely Realm King Xunian who was able to practice this in the Snow Song realm. This boy has not only practiced it successfully, its level has also reached the legendary realm of invisibility. He deserves to be personally praised by the Dragon Monarch. But no matter how powerful his movement skill is, it can only help him to temporarily avoid suffering defeat. He still has no chance to win against his opponent. Oh my, not bad, I must say. Luo Chang'an turned around as he narrowed his eyes. He didn't seem to have made any movement, but a blast of energy erupted from him all of a sudden. Dozens of streaks of profound energy were unleashed in an instant, which then transformed into a huge net of formless claws and suddenly swept towards Yuanqi. Ding! Dozens of streaks of profound energy struck Yuanqi at the same time, but it only made a light sound as an icy image got smashed to pieces and dissipated. Yuanqi's aura had again appeared behind Luo Chang'an. Luo Chang'an's face had now turned gloomy. His attacks had actually missed their target twice in a row, when his opponent was just in the divine tribulation realm. It was undoubtedly a matter of great disgrace for such a thing to happen with everybody watching. He slowly turned around as he smiled grimly. "Ha, you do have some ability to run away. In that case, let's see you try to flee again." The profound energy on Luo Chang'an's body greatly increased suddenly, as he actually released nearly 70% of his profound strength, then firmly locked his aura onto Yuanqi. Once someone at the 6th level of divine spirit realm forcibly suppresses a profound practitioner at the divine tribulation realm, it would be almost impossible for them to struggle free of it. Luo Chang'an's body came flying over to Yuanqi at this time as he struck down with his fist. "You unpleasant-looking garbage, get lost from here." In the face of Luo Chang'an's vicious attack, Yuanqi didn't choose to evade this time. Rather, he stayed still in place as the corner of his mouth slightly raised into a faint, ice-cold smile. It was not because he was seriously trying to tease and enrage Luo Chang'an that he had dodged the previous 2 attacks. He was in fact feeling out the level of his current strength. The day before yesterday, he would have felt an enormous suppression even if he was facing an opponent of the 1st level of divine spirit realm. However, confronting the 2 attacks from Luo Chang'an just now, he didn't feel the slightest suppression at all. He was able to dodge both times with such ease, as if he was leisurely walking in a quiet and peaceful courtyard. Even when the remnant energy of Luo Chang'an's attacks brushed against him, it only felt as if his body was being scratched by a fierce wind. Kaboom! Luo Chang'an's insidious attack firmly struck Yuanqi's chest, producing a world-shaking explosion of profound energy. Wiua! Following the sound of the explosion, a human figure was ruthlessly blown away. A scarlet mist of blood fiercely burst in midair, as a painful and incomparably miserable shriek resounded. Over at almost the same instant, the profound god stage became deathly silent, making that miserable shriek sound especially sad and shrill. The eyeballs of all the people popped out with force, as if they had seen a ghost or god. It was because the one that was blown away after the explosion was actually Luo Chang'an. Luo Chang'an's body flew uncontrollably several kilometers away before he landed on the ground, and barely managed to stabilize himself. On the other hand, let alone be blown away, Yuanqi hadn't moved in the slightest. The instant Luo Chang'an landed on the ground, he kneeled on the spot at once, his left hand grabbing his right arm. His face was twisted in shock and pain, and his whole right arm was hanging down. A few drops of blood seeped through the cracks between his fingers, flowing down in a streak. They dyed his entire right arm in scarlet. The mist of blood in the air had formed because of his arm blowing up. The clothing on his right arm had been destroyed and scattered, and his skin and flesh were exposed to the air. 30% of the bones of his right arm were broken as well. The majority of the people from the Holy Eve's realm stood up slowly, as they looked appalled and disbelievingly at what had just happened. The scene that they saw was no different from personally watching an ant throwing a huge elephant. All the people at the audience seating area of the conferred god stage were dumbstruck. They didn't dare to believe their eyes. What was that just now? All the god emperors revealed surprise on their faces too. Even the sleepy Kang Shishan, who had been leaning sideways in his seat this whole time, immediately sat upright and stared directly at Yuanqi with shining eyes. The god emperors had sensed extremely clearly that when Luo Chang'an's attack was about to hit Yuanqi, the latter's profound strength increased dramatically all of a sudden, to such an extent that it even far surpassed the energy contained in Luo Chang'an's attack. Once it blew him away, the amplified energy then disappeared suddenly, and Yuanqi's profound strength returned to its normal level. It made the god emperors doubt whether their spirit sense had incorrectly assessed his profound strength at the time. This. What is going on? Just what exactly is going on here? Luo Chang'an was actually blown away and even got injured. His condition is far worse than injured. It's clear that his right arm is broken. Yuanqi didn't even move from his place, and Luo Chang'an ended up in such a state just by the counterforce of his own energy. This. What exactly is? Those who could sit in the audience seats were all individuals that had a great identity and experience. But no matter what, they didn't dare believe their eyes when they saw the scene that had played out before them just now. Luo Chang'an was in even more disbelief. His eyes were wide open, and it took him as much as 5 or 6 breaths of time to come to himself. He suddenly said in a hoarse voice, He cheated. He certainly used some sort of body protection profound item. He cheated. It was the only possibility he could think of, the sole reason behind him suffering such a setback. Yuanqi had already cheated over and over again, after all. But Honorable Kui only gave Yuanqi a deep glance hearing this roar and didn't say anything to him. How could it be possible for Yuanqi to use some kind of body protection profound item without people of his level noticing? Luo Chang'an was indescribably shocked, while a faint smile appeared on Yuanqi's face. Having ascertained that Luo Chang'an was indeed of no threat to him, he then decided to use Luo Chang'an to test the strength of his most powerful state. Therefore, when Luo Chang'an rushed over to attack him, he immediately opened the gate of rumbling heaven. However, he was surprised himself to find out that his energy in his most powerful state could not only directly blow him away while dealing significant damage, he also didn't have to retreat even half a step to cancel the force behind the attack. An attack of this level couldn't cause him any pain. Although Yuanqi's profound strength had greatly increased, it was still not possible to maintain the rumbling heaven state for long. That's why he had immediately closed the gate after blowing Luo Chang'an away and returned to his normal state. But there was no doubt that he was able to maintain the rumbling heaven state for several times longer than the day before yesterday. Perhaps he could now maintain it for over 100 breaths. He had no idea when he would be able to keep it activated at all times, similar to evil soul, burning heart, and purgatory. He stretched out his hand and flicked at his chest that was just hit by Luo Chang'an with a very disdainful attitude. Afterwards, he walked over to Luo Chang'an at an unhurried pace, with a mocking look on his whole face. You talk so big, as if you're above heavens, so I thought that you would be quite capable. But in the end, this is all you amount to. Yuanqi would always respect his opponents, so long as the other party respected him. In case of an opponent such as Luo Chang'an, he would never mind giving them a sound beating and making them look as pathetic as a dog that had almost drowned in a river. As the bones of his right arm broke into pieces, the feeling of pain spread all over his body. He was unable to believe what had happened to him even now. He still hadn't finished his words when Yuanqi's figure flashed and approached him all of a sudden. Luo Chang'an's pupils shrank at this. He reacted instantly and retreated a couple 100 meters backward with the speed of lightning. However, Yuanqi followed him relentlessly and again approached him at such a fast speed that he didn't even have time to react. Yuanqi's palm grabbed Luo Chang'an's broken arm, and an enormous power surged from it, disintegrating the power that Luo Chang'an had released hurriedly in resistance in an instant. Grabbing his crippled arm, Yuanqi immediately swung Luo Chang'an up in the air, and then firmly smashed him onto the ground. Bang! Every jadestone of the conferred god stage was protected by a powerful energy, and it was absolutely not possible for the people of conferred god candidates level to damage them with their energy, but an incomparably deafening sound still resounded throughout the place. Luo Chang'an let out a shriek that was several times more miserable than earlier, as his thrown body bounced a few kilometers and sprayed blood all over in midair like a leaking blood bag. Young master, Chang'an! All the people of the Holy Eve's realm turned pale with shock. The Holy Eve's realm king suddenly stood on his feet too as his face darkened at this moment. The whole thing just now, the huge sound as if he was struck by lightning, him bouncing a few kilometers in the air, and his blood spraying all over, seemed so ruthless that it made the hearts of everyone present twitch violently. They didn't dare to believe that Luo Chang'an had attacked Yuanqi, but ended up being countered and injured. However, they clearly sensed the eruption of Yuanqi's energy when he had swung Luo Chang'an, according to their assessment of its level. It was certainly profound strength at the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm, but the tyrannical nature of it had actually suppressed Luo Chang'an, as well as completely surpassed the limit of the divine tribulation realm that they had known of all this time. Yuanqi had always been someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, and as such, quite a lot of hatred for Luo Chang'an had accumulated in his heart by now. Injuring him in a counterattack was just him feeling out his strength. It was only after the attack just now that he had truly started to take his revenge, and he didn't show any mercy in his attacks either. Luo Chang'an was, after all, an expert at the peak of the middle stage of the divine spirit realm. Even if Yuanqi's attack had broken an unknown number of his bones, he still managed to stand up slowly. However, his profound energy had weakened by 30% at the least, and was in an incomparably chaotic state. His hair was a mess, his face was contorted into an unsightly look, and his pupils were enlarged to their limits. Impose, impossible, impossible. If he was defeated by other conferred god candidates, no matter how miserably he got defeated, he would be able to calmly accept it. But his opponent was Yuanqi, the same person who was clearly a worthless thing, garbage in his eyes. It was a fact that he was someone who hadn't even dared to get on the conferred god stage to fight with him in their first battle, and had directly conceded. He had thought that he would be able to trample the other party to his heart's content. But not only did his attack not hurt him, he was even injured by his own attack rebounding. On the other hand, Yuanqi had only attacked him once, and he was already in such a pitiful condition. Seeing the trash he had mocked and humiliated in an unbridled manner 10 breaths time ago, getting closer to him little by little, he felt an unprecedented fear in his heart. His mind was in great disorder as he let out a strange shout, and a cyan light flashed in his hand. A weird dagger with a broad hilt appeared in his hand, and then he immediately pounced towards Yuanqi. But he had just moved his body when his gaze turned sinister all of a sudden, and his left arm flung out suddenly. Like a shooting star, the weirdly shaped dagger shot straight at Yuanqi's throat. Yuanqi stopped in his tracks. He stretched out his right palm and instantly generated a swirl of cold energy in front of him. When the dagger was about to get close to him, it got frozen in several layers of ice, and its speed abruptly decreased as well. Afterwards, it actually came to a standstill right before Yuanqi, and was then casually caught by him. Luo Chang'an stood stiffly in place, looking scared out of his wits. "So this is all you've got, huh?" Yuanqi sneered as he turned over his wrist. "Let me return it to you, R.I.P." An incomparably ear-piercing sound of space ripping apart resounded. It was as sharp as the sound of a rock being torn asunder. Luo Chang'an's dagger shot back with a speed several times faster than when it had targeted Yuanqi. Luo Chang'an could only shrink his pupils in reaction as the dagger pierced all the way through his left shoulder, leaving behind a 15-centimeter wide hole which one could see right through. It was also at this time that Yuanqi's figure appeared before him in a flash. His speed was actually a bit faster than even the flying dagger. At the same time the flying dagger pierced Luo Chang'an's shoulder, Yuanqi's elbow brutally smashed into his lower abdomen. Boom! As if a very high mountain had burst apart inside his body, Luo Chang'an's whole body froze in place, and his face turned incomparably ghastly pale in no time. Soon after, several blood arrows shot crazily out of his mouth, nose, and the hole on his shoulder. The conferred god stage fell into a deathly silence as everyone present stared ahead with eyes wide open. They were witnessing something which could be called the most inconceivable scene that they had seen in their lives. Yuanqi leisurely stood straight, lifting his arm diagonally and blew on his elbow, as if to make sure to get off the dirt on it. Only a step away from him, Luo Chang'an didn't budge an inch as fresh blood gushed out of his entire body. His eyes were widened to their limits, and countless red veins could be seen in them. Thud. He heavily kneeled down in front of Yuanqi as his knees gave out. "Ha! I thought a dog that can bark so furiously would have some bite to back it up. I didn't expect it to actually collapse at the first blow." Yuanqi lowered his brows as he spoke in a low tone of voice that only Luo Chang'an could hear. But right after, his voice suddenly became louder. "Luo Chang'an, is this all you've got? In that case, you'd better surrender quickly." "Oh, no, no." Yuanqi suddenly changed his tone as his eyes narrowed dangerously. "I almost forgot. Luo Chang'an certainly said just now that a true man only has the option to fight to death and will not surrender at all costs. Only the lowest kind of garbage would beg to surrender like a dog tisk. Wouldn't giving you the chance to surrender be no different from slapping your face? I really should not be doing such a thing." As soon as he finished his words, Yuanqi flung out his arm suddenly. The back of his hand firmly slapped Luo Chang'an's right cheek, which was deathly pale at this moment. Although it was just a slap, there was an incomparably heavy weight behind it, and hence, Luo Chang'an's right cheekbone was completely shattered. His whole body flew away uncontrollably while rotating like a top, rolling on the conferred god stage for a long while before finally coming to a stop. His originally handsome face was now in an utterly battered state, and the whole right side of his face had sunk, with his chin completely bent to the left. Sprawling on the floor, he coughed continuously, each cough accompanied by a huge mouthful of blood and several crushed teeth. Many people gasped in fright. There was a saying that one could beat another person but not their face. However, Huanzhi had not only beat the face of his opponent, he even destroyed it to such an extent that he looked like a buffoon furthermore. He had beaten and destroyed the face of none other than the son of the Holy Eve's Realm King. It was a face that represented the Holy Eve's Realm King, as well as the entire Holy Eve's realm. Chang'an! The Holy Eve's realm had an exceedingly great identity and status. In the vast eastern divine region, his Holy Eve's realm was publicly recognized as the strongest under the King realms. They had never experienced such galling shame and deep humiliation. Even if the ability of the Holy Eve's realm king to exercise self-restraint was 10 times greater, he would still fly into a rage after what had happened just now. He let out a loud roar as he directly rushed over to the conferred god stage. "Little boy Huanzhi, you are seeking death." But before he could get closer to the sky above the conferred god stage, a figure blocked his way while emitting a tyrannical blast of aura. Honorable Kui said with an indifferent gaze, "Holy Eve's Realm King, immediately return to the audience seating area. No one is allowed to interfere in the conferred god battle, and I think that you should already be aware of this rule." "Honorable Kui," the Holy Eve's Realm King forcibly suppressed his anger. "This boy is clearly going too far due to his malicious intent. It is apparent that he is humiliating my Holy Eve's realm. HMPH, the conferred god battle only has the rule of not killing the opponent due to malicious intent. Not that you can't go too far due to malicious intent. If Luo Chang'an finds it unbearable, he is free to shout that he intends to surrender. In that case, Huanzhi won't be able to attack him any longer. But since he hasn't surrendered yet, it means that he still wishes to continue fighting. No one is allowed to interfere." Hearing the rebuke of Honorable Kui, the Holy Eve's Realm King also calmed down a bit. He nodded his head. "All right, then we admit defeat in this battle. This king admits defeat on behalf of Chang'an. Only he himself can admit defeat. No one else has the right to concede in his place." The look in the eyes of Honorable Kui grew a bit chilly again. He slowly raised his head as he pointed to the audience seating area. "Holy Eve's Realm King, this honored one is warning you for the last time. Get away from the conferred god stage immediately. Otherwise, we will have to drive you out of the eternal heaven realm, no matter who you are." The corner of the Holy Eve's Realm King's mouth twitched, but he was unable to speak any further. The Holy Eve's Realm King inhaled heavily as he turned around in anger. He was just about to return to the audience seating area when a miserable cry came from the conferred god stage all of a sudden. "Wua!" The Holy Eve's Realm King turned around instantly to see a scene that caused him to stare in such anger that his eyes were on the verge of cracking apart. An icy thorn grew from the ground, pierced through the bloody hole on the left shoulder of Luo Chang'an, and shot to the sky with him skewered on it. Over 30 feet, over 300 feet, over 3,000 feet. In the blink of an eye, Luo Chang'an was ruthlessly stabbed through by an icy thorn, at a place over 3,000 feet high in the sky. As if he was an unpardonably wicked person who had perpetrated every conceivable heinous crime, and would be condemned for his sins through the ages. The distinguished son of the Holy Eve's Realm King was skewered on an icy thorn very high up in the sky, so that every person, every living being in the eastern divine region could get a clear view of him. "Luo Chang'an, I grant you 5 breaths' time. Show me whether you're actually such a person as you say, or a dog that would beg to surrender." At the seating area for the audience, the Holy Eve's Realm King was immensely enraged at this point. In the sky above, Luo Chang'an was crying miserably in despair. At the foot of the icy thorn, Huanzhi still had that indifferent smile, like still water on his face. As if he didn't feel anything in the least, he hadn't even glanced in the direction of the Holy Eve's Realm King at all. At this moment, everyone felt an indescribable chill in their hearts. Huanzhi, who had kept a low profile during his stay in the God realm so far, did everything with as much carefulness as possible, and always had the sole aim of meeting Jasmine, had now suddenly become a completely different person. No, the correct way to put it would be that he had suddenly undone all the chains that had kept him bound until now. On the conferred God stage, in this eternal heaven realm, He was declaring the kind of end those who enraged him would meet to the whole eastern divine region, just as he did in the profound sky continent. Chang'an loudly wailed in a hoarse voice. It was simply impossible for any frost energy to be comparable to what was cultivated through the Ice Phoenix God investiture cannon. He felt as if 10 million soul-drilling thorns had pierced through his entire body, causing him to suffer inscrutable pain. But even if the pain his body was feeling were to increase by 10 times, it would still not be possible for it be as unbearable as the feeling of humiliation in his heart. It wasn't just his body that was nailed firmly in the sky. All the glory and dignity he had possessed in his life had suffered the same fate as well. This scene of everybody watching him in such a state had never even appeared in the worst of his nightmares. It would certainly become such a shame for him that he never be able to get rid of it. Under the effect of the absolutely fearsome power of the Ice Phoenix, he found it impossible to even move a finger. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't channel his profound strength and forcibly make himself pass out. Gradually, he could no longer sense the existence of his body, and only endless pain and humiliation was felt. Huanzhi, the Holy Eve's Realm King, seemed like a volcano had erupted in his chest. Luo Chang'an might be quite a good-for-nothing, but he was still his son, the son of the Holy Eve's Realm King. How could he let him experience such humiliation? How could he let the Holy Eve's realm experience such humiliation? Let alone Huanzhi, who was from a middle star realm, not even one of the 4 god children of the eastern region would have dared to treat Luo Chang'an in such a manner. Everyone from the Holy Eve's realm had also stood up, dark looks on their faces. If this place wasn't the conferred god stage but somewhere else in the eastern divine region, they would have already taken action in rage, without a doubt. In the eastern seating area, every god emperor had a big frown too. Although Luo Chang'an had an arrogant and domineering nature, and had openly humiliated Huanzhi several times in front of everybody earlier, they also hadn't expected that not only would Huanzhi have a complete victory over Luo Chang'an, but he would even return the insult to him countless times over, while everyone in the eastern divine region watched their battle. Huanzhi, I will, kill you, Luo Chang'an shouted with all his might, but every word he shouted sounded more painful than the previous one. The last of his words almost contained a sense of despair. The lungs of the Holy Eve's Realm King were on the verge of bursting with rage. But as he had been given a warning by Honorable Kui, he could not let himself lose control at all. He forcefully inhaled before saying in a loud voice, Chang'an, a real man should know when to submit or stand tall, and victory and defeat are common happenings. Even if means that you'll lose the battle, calm your mind and admit defeat. There is no need to force yourself to continue the fight. No, no, no. The Holy Eve's Realm King is greatly mistaken. As soon as the Holy Eve's Realm King finished his words, Huanzhi suddenly turned around and said in a clear, loud voice, without giving Luo Chang'an the chance to reply, in the eyes of ordinary people, victory and defeat are common happenings. If you're no match for your opponent, it's acceptable to admit defeat in that case too. But this is great young master Luo Chang'an we're talking about. In his eyes, admitting defeat or surrendering is the work of lowly garbage, and such an action is akin to a dog begging to surrender. A real man can absolutely not do such a thing. If he truly admitted defeat and surrendered, wouldn't that mean that he recognizes himself as lowly garbage and a dog begging to surrender? That would not only be humiliating himself, but even the whole Holy Eve's realm. As the son of the Holy Eve's Realm King, how could Luo Chang'an do such a thing? You! Oh, right! Completely ignoring the great anger on the face of Holy Eve's Realm King, Huanzhi continued. It's not like I am forcing Luo Chang'an to do so, as it was actually him who said those words earlier. Everyone sitting here, and all the people in the eastern divine region who are watching the battle, must have very clearly heard him say that. I'm not exaggerating anything here. Furthermore, when Luo Chang'an was giving that fine speech, the Holy Eve's Realm King didn't say a word of rebuke to stop him, which clearly showed that he approved of his words. It is likely that it should be a principle of the profound way that your Holy Eve's realm has followed all this time, right? It makes me feel admiration from the bottom of my heart. Not only did he humiliate Luo Chang'an to such a great extent, he even forced him to a dead end with his words. Moreover, he even managed to ridicule the Holy Eve's realm in passing. The Holy Eve's Realm King stared at Huanzhi as he said in a low voice, "Little boy, you've got some big guts. Ha 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 ha." The moment Holy Eve's Realm King finished those words, he was interrupted by a wild laugh. At the eastern seating area, Kang Shishin was clapping as he laughed without the slightest bearing of a god emperor. A real man is one who takes his revenge at all costs. Yun boy, you did well. So pleasant. There was no doubt that God Emperor Kang Shishin's unbridled, wild laughter was a slap in the holy Eve's realm king's face. His gaze turned gloomy once again, but he didn't dare to look directly at the location of God Emperor Kang Shishin, nor did he return to his seat either. He said in an extremely low voice, "Honorable Kui, my son Chang'an has already suffered defeat. This evil creature Yun Qi is obviously humiliating him on purpose. Such a thing is not only an insult to my holy Eve's realm, but also the conferred god battle." HMPH, Luo Chang'an was the one who humiliated the other party first. He can only blame himself for experiencing revenge in such a manner. Honorable Kui snorted as he displayed complete indifference. Instead, he turned away and said in a heavy voice, "Luo Chang'an, the profound strength of your body has been fully sealed, and you no longer possess the power to struggle any further. This honored one wishes to judge this as your defeat. Do you have any objections?" The Holy Eve's realm king suddenly raised his head as he said in an urgent voice, "Chang'an!" Luo Chang'an was in extreme pain as he remained nailed in the sky. However, he had been forced to not surrender due to what Yun Qi had said. He was in utter misery as he couldn't choose what to do in such a situation. When he suddenly heard Honorable Kui's words, they sounded to him as if they came from a celestial being, and he mustered his all strength to roar, "Junior has no objection." HMPH, Honorable Kui waved his arm. A light sound resounded as the ice thorn keeping Luo Chang'an nailed in the sky dissipated in an instant. Immediately, Luo Chang'an fell straight to the ground and laid prostrate on the ground like a dog that had drowned in water due to having broken limbs, as his entire body twitched over and over again. He understood very clearly that his ugly display on this day had caused him the loss of his dignity and prestige in the eyes of countless profound practitioners of the Eastern divine region, as he had the prominent identities of both the son of Holy Eve's realm king and a conferred god candidate. News about his ugly performance would certainly spread like a plague. He would become a laughing stock for a very long period of time. First battle of the second round of the losers group, Yun Qi has won and will enter the third round of the losers group tomorrow. Luo Chang'an has lost and will have to leave the conferred god battle. As Honorable Kui announced the result, Luo Chang'an turned his head around with difficulty. He wanted to look in the direction of Yun Qi, but he had barely turned his head halfway when he directly fainted because of severe injuries and the psychological stress from shame and anger. Yun Qi coldly looked at Luo Chang'an and didn't say anything. The Holy Eve's realm was, after all, one of the most prestigious and strongest among the upper star realms. It was not possible for the eternal heaven realm to truly remain indifferent after things had come so far. He was not surprised in the least by Honorable Kui forcibly interfering in the battle. The Holy Eve's realm king stretched out his hand, as a suction force from his palm brought Luo Chang'an's body to him. Afterwards, he speedily flew away along with him and didn't even spare Yun Qi another glance. However, Yun Qi clearly sensed a wisp of cold light sweep over his body. This was the first true battle of Yun Qi on the conferred god battle stage, and even in the profound god convention so far, 3 days ago, it had definitely been impossible for him to be Luo Chang'an's opponent, but he had obtained a complete victory in the battle this day. He had thoroughly defeated a profound practitioner at the 6th level of the divine spirit realm, with profound strength at the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm. So it was easy to imagine the shock it gave to the people watching the battle. As he left the conferred god stage and returned to the audience seating area, almost all the gazes were still focused on him. The audience found it hard to shake off the feeling of shock for a long while. Even the people from the Snow Song realm were staring blankly at Yun Qi. It was evident that they hadn't come back to themselves yet either. "Are you truly Yun Qi?" Great Elder of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect, Huanzhi looked straight at Yun Qi. "Just how did you?" "Great Elder, it is because of a secret method that the sect prepared for Yun Qi a long time ago. Apparently it was very effective," Mu Bingyun said in a light tone. "So that's the case." Mu Huanzhi and others slowly nodded their heads, but they also felt quite surprised in their hearts. Back then, Yun Qi had continuously defeated freezing Snow Hall disciples in the Divine Origin realm with profound strength at the Sovereign Profound realm, and it deeply surprised the elders of the sect upon coming to know of it. but they had never heard of anyone winning against an opponent in the middle stages of the divine spirit realm, while being in the late stages of the divine tribulation realm. It was absolutely not something any secret method could accomplish. "Brother Yun, that was so great," Huopoyun said excitedly. As someone whose profound strength had also dramatically increased due to the execution of a secret method, he naturally wouldn't do such a thing as curiously inquiring with Yun Qi about the reason for the great amplification in his strength. At his side, both Hu Ruli and Yan Juhai had their eyes opened wide. They looked at Yun Qi as if they were seeing an absurd monster. At a place very far away, a pair of starry eyes was watching the conferred god stage from high in the clouds. Their gaze had been following a person all along. From the instant he made Luo Chang'an kneel until he carefully left the conferred god stage. The day before, she had personally seen Yun Qi leaving the eternal heaven realm by himself and entering the profound formation to return to the snow song realm. The moment his figure had disappeared, she had felt an enormous feeling of loss, as if most of her heart and soul had been hollowed out. But at the same time, her heart had also finally calmed down. He went away. He finally went away. I ask you, don't ever come back, but he had actually returned just after just one day. He had such energy, as if he had been reborn, and even the look in his eyes had changed completely. Her heart had grown so utterly disordered that she herself was unable to describe her feelings at this moment. "Yun Qi, why have you come back?" she absent-mindedly said in a low tone. "Why are you not willing to listen to my words again?" It was at this time that her gaze shifted sideways all of a sudden. The blank and chaotic look in her eyes instantly turned terribly cold and bone-piercing. It was because she had sensed an extremely hateful aura that she would not stop to hate even if she were to die. "Kaian Yi, Ying, Killing intent crazily surged from the depths of her mind and eyes, but was then firmly suppressed right away. She turned around as she moved towards the opposite direction without making any sound and quickly disappeared into the horizon. In another direction, Kaianai Yinger slowly took her eyes off Jasmine. There was a dried-up old person in gray clothes at her side. "Miss, the heavenly slaughter star god discovered you just now," the dried-up old person said in a low voice. But not only did she not attack Miss, but she even took the initiative to go away to some distant place. Considering the nature of the heavenly slaughter star god, it is really odd for her to do such a thing. However, it seems that Miss has a well-thought-out plan. If not for that person, she would have certainly attacked me. But Kaianai Yinger's lips rose into such an absolutely beautiful curve that any man of the eastern divine region would have lost himself upon catching sight of her face. "Oh, Uncle Gu, keep an eye on that person called Yun Qi from now on. Besides him, you don't need to be concerned about anyone or anything," Kaianai Yinger said. "I want to dig out all the secrets he has. The things he possesses might turn out to be even more interesting than the world-defying heaven manual." The conferred god battle of the second round of the losers group continued. In the second battle, on one side was an acquaintance of Yun Qi, Wu Guike, and on the other was Li Jianming, who had perished together with Wei Hen. Although Li Jianming was dead, his name was still left behind in the participants list of the conferred god battle. Therefore, technically speaking, Wu Guike didn't get a free victory like Yun Qi the day before, but the result was exactly the same. Wu Guike directly obtained victory and entered the third round of the losers group that was to be held the next day. After the successive unexciting battles, with Yun Qi unexpectedly crushing and tormenting his opponent one-sidedly in the first battle, and then Wu Guike winning without a fight, the fights starting with the third battle became incomparably fierce. As there was no visible difference in the profound strength of the opponents, the quality and mastery of their profound energy, as well as the execution of their profound arts, became the key factors to victory. The longest battle continued for over 2 hours before it was possible to determine the winner and loser. It was nearing evening by the time the second round of the losers group came to an end. In the battles this day, a total of 8 conferred god candidates were eliminated, and the remaining 8 winners entered battle on the next day. Of the 32 conferred god candidates, 16 people had been eliminated thus far. The matchup list for the battles the day after was also displayed on the screen of light at this time. Conferred Gods Group Second Round Battles. Battle 1, Flame God Realm, Huopoyun, 7th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. vs. Jasper Heart Sword Pavilion Junzile, 10th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, Battle 2. Holy Eve's Realm, Luo Changsheng, 10th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. vs. Shrouding Sky Realm Lu Lengchuan, 10th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, Battle 3. Glazed Light Realm Shui Meiyan, 1st level of the Divine Spirit Realm, vs. Flying Star Realm Meng Duangxi, 9th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, Battle 4. Glazed Light Realm Shui Yingyu, 10th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, vs. Rising Sun Sacred Realm Ko Feng, 9th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. A total of 8 battles were going to be held tomorrow. 4 battles of the second round of Conferred Gods group, and 4 battles of the third round of Losers group. Although they were already mentally prepared, everyone from the Flame God realm felt their hearts sink down upon seeing the name of Huo Poyan's opponent in the matchup list. The successor of the Sword Sovereign, one of the Eastern region's 4 god children, Huanzhi. Huo Poyan didn't change the expression on his face, but his hands slowly clenched into fists. Yan Juhai and Huo Ruli glanced at each other. They were very clear about the strength of the Sword Sovereign's successor, who was also one of the Eastern region's 4 god children. They had come into close contact with the master-disciple pair in the Snow Song realm before arriving at the Eternal Heaven realm. Huanzhi was still of a young age, but the aura of the Way of Sword accumulated within her body made even 2 great divine sovereigns such as them feel inwardly apprehensive. It was absolutely not possible for Huo Poyan to be her opponent. The atmosphere remained tense for a short while, after which Huo Ruli relaxed his brows. He heavily patted Huo Poyan's shoulder as he said smilingly, "Yuner, you just have to give it your best in the battle tomorrow. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You have already surpassed my expectations by 100, no, 1,000 times by being able to come this far, and have also won unprecedented glory for our Flame God realm. Therefore, you don't need to feel pressure any longer." Huo Poyan slowly nodded his head, but didn't say anything. Yun Qi glanced sideways at Huo Poyan. He knew very well that the true pressure for Huo Poyan didn't originate from the expectations of the Flame God realm, but from his own. In the second round of the Conferred Gods group, the first battle between the god children of the Eastern region was finally going to take place. Luo Changsheng vs Lu Lengchuan. The battles between the 4 god children of the Eastern region was undoubtedly going to be the greatest showdowns between the Eastern Divine region's younger generation. Note: should be the second round as mentioned above, not the third round. It seems to be a mistake made by the author. Yun Qi was at once taken aback when he saw the matchup list of the second round of the Conferred Gods group. Shui Mei Yin, she's actually still not eliminated. Moreover, she is in the Conferred Gods group. What's going on? It was easy to imagine the great strength possessed by those who were still left in the Conferred Gods group. Luo Changsheng, Huanzhi, Shui Yingyu, and Lu Lengchuan together monopolized half of those places, and Meng Duangxi as well as Ko Feng were both at the 9th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. They all were absolute experts who had firmly occupied a place in the top 10 lists in the preliminaries. Comparatively speaking, Huo Poyan's profound strength at the 7th level of the Divine Spirit Realm was definitely near the bottom level among the 32 Conferred God candidates, so he could be called an exception for still being in the Conferred Gods group. In the opinion of the majority, luck was the biggest reason for such a thing to happen. After all, both of his opponents so far hadn't lost because of him showing his amazing strength, or anything of the sort. One of them, Lu Chenyuan, was caught unprepared due to his arrogant and conceited attitude, and didn't even get the chance to display his true strength. The other was Luo Chang'an, whose profound strength was at the bottom level compared to the other contestants, and had entered the Conferred Gods group without having to fight a battle. It was nothing amazing to defeat such an opponent. But why was Shui Meiyan still in the Conferred Gods group? On the first day of the competition, he had immediately left after conceding, and he wasn't even present at the battle site the day before. Therefore, he knew nothing about the other fights of the Conferred God battle. He didn't see Shui Meiyan's name in the matchup list of the second round of the losers group this day, and naturally thought that she had been eliminated. After all, although she managed to enter the group of 32 Conferred God candidates with tricks, her profound strength was only at the first level of the Divine Spirit Realm. So it was only natural for her to be immediately eliminated in the Conferred God battle. He was completely unable to understand what he was seeing at this moment. Not only was she not eliminated, her name was actually in the matchup list of the second round of the Conferred Gods group tomorrow. Palace Master Bingyun, how did Shui Meiyan win in her previous battle? Yun Qi asked Mu Bingyun as he looked to her. Among the 8 people of the Conferred Gods group, 4 were at the 10th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, and 2 were at the 9th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. Huo Poyun was already considered an exception, so for someone like Shui Meiyin to be there with her profound strength of the first level of Divine Spirit Realm was there something really fishy going on? Mu Bingyun replied, Shui Meiyin indeed relied on her strength to remain in the conferred gods group. Although her profound strength is only in the early stages of the Divine Spirit Realm, her strength cannot be measured according to normal conventions, the same as in your case. Yun Qi's strength was far beyond the level of his profound strength, which was mainly because he possessed the unique inheritance of a creation god. He had the heaven-defying evil god's profound veins, but what was Shui Meiyin relying on that made her so strong? As for how she fought her opponent, you will be able to see it for yourself in the battle tomorrow. Yun Qi was startled once again. Mu Bingyun clearly sounded as if she was implying that Shui Meiyin might win in the battle tomorrow, too. She would win against Meng Duangxi, who was at the 9th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. You had better pay attention to your opponent tomorrow, Mu Bingyun said in a serious tone. In the matchup list of the 3rd round of losers group, Yun Qi found his name at a glance. Battle 1. Divine Martial Realm, Wu Guike, 8th level of the Divine Spirit Realm vs Snow Song Realm Yun Qi, 8th level of the Divine Tribulation Realm, Wu Guike. Just as Yun Qi raised his head, his gaze met with a malevolent one. Wu Guike was sitting at the side of Wu Sanzun, the Divine Martial Realm King. There was surprise in his eyes, but they contained even more ruthlessness. He almost lost all his standing and reputation because of helping Yun Qi to cheat, after all. Other than surprise and ruthlessness, there was some fear within them too. Yun Qi had 2 great blackmailing items with him. Yun Qi shifted his gaze away and said in a low tone, "We're truly fated, huh?" Mu Bingyun found no trace of seriousness on Yun Qi's face. She asked in a low tone of voice, "How confident are you in obtaining victory against an opponent of Wu Guike's level?" 100%, Yun Qi immediately replied without the slightest hesitation. Mu Bingyun revealed surprise in her eyes before she said in warning, "Be sure to not underestimate Wu Guike. The profound art of the Divine Martial Realm is extremely hard, fierce, and domineering, which makes it difficult to execute. However, not only is Wu Guike proficient enough to easily execute it at such a young age, he has also cultivated it to a very high realm. His battle power will greatly surpass an opponent of the same level. The reason he has fallen into the losers group is due to him getting beaten by none other than Luo Changsheng." Following the end of the conferred god battle for this day, 16 people were eliminated. Only 16 were left out of the 32 conferred god candidates. But who would have thought that it would actually be Yun Qi that caused the biggest sensation and attracted the most attention? He had completely defeated Luo Chang'an, 6th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, with profound strength at the 8th level of the Divine Tribulation Realm. Moreover, he had ignored the enormous might of the Holy Eve's realm as he humiliated Luo Chang'an 100 times more than he himself had been, on the conferred god stage. Either of these 2 facts was enough to make everyone change the expressions on their faces, and many even had looks of shock. Even the experts from the great star realms, including the great realm kings, didn't dare to believe their eyes. Yun Qi obviously expected things to turn out this way, but he didn't worry about it in the least. While his actions had caused monstrous waves and lead to countless speculations in the profound strength cultivation world of the Eastern Divine region, he returned to his residence and sat at the side of the pond where he had quietly passed a night earlier, silently thinking things through. It was because of the rule that no outsiders were allowed to visit or disturb the conferred god candidates during the conferred god battle, period, that the residences of both the Snow Song realm and the Flame God realm were particularly quiet. Otherwise, it was certain that a large number of people would have visited Yun Qi after his performance on this day. Yun Qi. Mu Bingyun soundlessly walked over to him. She spread open her palm in front of Yun Qi. "This is your time wheel pearl that was distributed yesterday." After every 2 rounds, the contestants would obtain a time wheel pearl to treat their physical injuries and recover profound strength, so long as they didn't get eliminated. Yun Qi said as he took it, "Thank you, Palace Master Bingyun." Mu Bingyun retracted her snow-white hand. "Are you not planning to use this time wheel pearl to adjust your condition? Your opponent tomorrow will absolutely be much stronger than Luo Chang'an." "No need," Yun Qi said with a faint smile. "I hardly exhausted my strength while fighting Luo Chang'an. Furthermore, given his recovery ability, which was far more extraordinary than an ordinary person's, it would be enough for him to completely recover in a night's time, even if he had exhausted most of his strength. Mu Bingyun's gaze showed a slight surprise at his reply. After hesitating for a brief moment, she asked once again, "Can you give me approximate estimation of your current strength?" Yuanqi shook his head slightly. "I don't know. Once I witness the 4 battles of the Conferred Gods group tomorrow, I will have a rough idea about it. However, it should not be too difficult to win against Wu Guike." What Mu Bingyun felt from Yuanqi wasn't arrogance due to the great increase in his strength and thoroughly defeating Luo Chang'an. It was an unshakable confidence that he harbored in his heart. However, seeing him so calm and confident actually caused the look in Mu Bingyun's eyes to grow complicated. She shifted her gaze away and suddenly asked in a faint voice, "Yuanqi, it seems that you are really not clear about the one that gave you the strength you possess right now." Yuanqi was startled. He said in puzzlement, My profound strength greatly increased because of the medicinal power of the universe pentajade pellet that I had refined inside the time wheel barrier. What is Palace Master Bingyun trying to say? Then, why do you have your master's aura on your body?" Mu Bingyun slowly closed her beautiful eyes as she found it difficult to calm the surging thoughts and emotions in her mind. The medicinal power of the universe pentajade pellet was too fierce, and I was basically unable to refine it with my own energy. Therefore, it was Master who assisted me through the whole thing. Yuanqi replied as he felt doubtful in his heart. There was no reason for Mu Bingyun to be unaware of it. "So you mean to say that you had sealed your external senses during the refining process of the universe pentajade pellet?" Yuanqi nodded his head. The medicinal power of that universe pentajade pellet was several times fiercer than I had expected it to be. So I didn't dare to let myself be distracted by external influence. Furthermore, I was still surrounded by perils despite trying to be so careful. If it was not for Master guiding her energy into my body to help me refine the medicinal power, my life would have very likely been in danger. "Guiding her energy into your body?" Mu Bingyun's chest heaved heavily. She let out a very light sigh and turned away. The universe pentajade pellet can certainly boost the cultivation of a profound practitioner by a great extent before they reach the divine tribulation. But in your case, you had already entered the divine tribulation realm. Do you truly believe that just by relying on a universe pentajade pellet, you could raise your cultivation from the early stages of the divine tribulation realm up to its late stages? Besides, your profound veins are very abnormal compared to ordinary people, and hence would require much greater energy to raise your cultivation compared to others. Yuanqi slowly stood up, but he could only see the back of Mu Bingyun. Although there is one other reason behind the increase in my profound strength, the medicinal power of the universe pentajade pellet was indeed a bit extraordinary. "Palace Master Bingyun, do you mean that? Master executed some other secret method on me while helping me to refine the medicinal power?" Mu Bingyun didn't reply, and instead said lightly, "If she hasn't told you anything, it shows that she doesn't want you to know about it, or anyone else for that matter. Therefore, you don't need to inquire any further. Don't ask your master about it either. Yuanqi, you only need to remember one thing." Mu Bingyun's voice became faintly chilly all of a sudden. "I owe you a great favor for saving me, so it is natural for me to help you in various ways. But your master doesn't owe you anything. She has assisted you in so many ways because she wants to be good to you. Don't you ever do anything that would let her down." Mu Bingyun's heart had always been calm like still water. Her voice was mild like clouds and as light and slow as fog. But Yuanqi actually sensed deep chilliness in her voice at this time when she spoke these words. Yuanqi stood dazed in place, with a blank look on his whole face. He watched the back of Mu Bingyun, who was already moving away, far into the distance at a slow pace. Afterwards, she disappeared from his sight. Amidst the quiet surroundings, Yuanqi kept looking ahead blankly for a long time. There was absolutely some deep meaning hidden within Mu Bingyun's words. He vaguely remembered that 2 years ago, when Mu Xuanian had captured him at the illusory sea island and brought him back to the snow song realm, Mu Bingyun seemed to have spoken in a similar tone when he saw her upon awakening. What exactly was the meaning of her words? Yuanqi again sat back at the side of the pond with his brows knitted. Very soon, he closed his eyes and started to attempt recalling the details of the refining process of the universe pentajade pellet inside the time wheel barrier. It took quite a long time for the universe pentajade pellet to be refined completely. When he had finally opened his eyes, the time wheel barrier had still existed, but there was only a very thin layer of it left. It was evident that the barrier was on the verge of dissipating. Hence, he didn't dare delay any longer, and had at once focused his mind on fusing the Ice Phoenix divine soul that the Ice Phoenix girl had given to him. Given his special profound veins and soul, the process of the fusion of the Ice Phoenix divine soul was naturally extremely fast. The whole process had finished successfully in less than 3 days. But it was not that he had woken up on his own, but it was Wu Guike's shout that had awakened him instead. The time wheel barrier had disappeared by the time he woke up, and the time for this day's conferred god battle to begin was drawing closer. He was brought to the teleportation profound formation by Wu Guike and had rushed to the conferred god stage at his top speed, but was still about to be late for the battle. During this whole period, he had sometimes sealed his senses, sometimes fully concentrated his mind to cultivate, and sometimes burned with impatience. There had naturally been no time for him to carefully think about things until now. But at this time, he finally recalled the memories of him refining the universe penta-jade pellet as he was feeling doubt. He at once sensed something odd just after thinking a bit about the refining process. The aura that had surged every time the medicinal power went out of control. It was clearly an external aura, but it could perfectly fuse with his own later, whenever it appeared. It would be slightly weaker than the previous time. The most important point was that the moment it appeared within him, he immediately found it familiar for some reason, a familiar feeling. Huanzhi suddenly thought back to the time in the God-burying Inferno prison. Inside the primordial profound arc, he had to commit an immoral act so as to not let Wu Guike be hurt by the blood of the horned dragon in her severely injured state. He had violated her 10-odd times, the aura that had flowed in reverse up to his body on its own every time he raped her, and caused his profound strength to break through from the divine origin realm to the divine soul realm. Huanzhi stood up all of a sudden as if his body had come into contact with electricity. He stared blankly ahead for a long while, and his brain was in mess. Impossible, how could Master? Wu Guike came to the courtyard in the early morning of the next day. She found Huanzhi quietly standing by the pond's side. His body had a thick layer of morning dew on it, which made it evident that he had not slept the whole night. Huanzhi turned around to look at Wu Guike. She sensed something from within the expression in his eyes, but he didn't shift his gaze away from her. His eyes still had a mild look like the day before, and there was now even a trace of resoluteness too. Palace Master Guike, I assure you that I'll absolutely not do anything that would let Master down, Huanzhi said all of a sudden. Wu Guike was taken aback. She said in a light tone with an incomparably complicated look in her eyes, You don't need to assure me of anything. The conferred god battle is about to start, so let's be on our way. In the conferred god battle on this day, the top 16 will be contending against each other. There was no doubt that the battles were going to be much more fierce and wonderful than previously. Wu Guike flew to the conferred god stage, bringing Huanzhi along. Her speed was not really fast, and she didn't say a word the whole way. As it was a matter related to Wu Guike, it was unavoidable for the atmosphere between the two to become subtly strange. Wu Guike, in particular, was unable to have the same state of mind as before while facing Huanzhi. She could not accept what Wu Guike had done, nor did she understand the reasoning behind it. She could still somehow accept Wu Guike for giving him 2 years ago. After all, Huanzhi's original intention was to save her. But why would she do so this time? Brother Yun, Senior Guike. It was at this time that Huanzhi's voice came from behind. Wu Guike's figure stopped in her tracks. She shoved her snow-white hand sideways as she retrieved her energy on Huanzhi. Remember to not be late. Having finished her words, her snow-white figure flashed and appeared several kilometers away. Huanzhi was by himself and very soon came over to Huanzhi's side. Huanzhi turned to him with a faint smile. Brother Poyan, how come you are alone? Where are your master and the others? Poyan explained. Last night, Master and Sect Master Yan combined their power to set up a fire spirit realm for my sake, and had me cultivate inside it with the assistance of the time wheel barrier. Right now, they are in the process of retrieving the spirit fire realm. As my battle is scheduled to be the first today, they were worried that I might be late, so they made me leave for the conferred god battle ahead of them. They should be arriving there very soon. I see. Huanzhi nodded his head. Brother Poyan, your opponent today is Junzile. How confident are you in winning against her? Well, Huopoyan let out a bitter laugh. Frankly speaking, I truly don't have the slightest confidence. However, although I don't believe that I can win against her, it's not going to be so easy for her to beat me either. Sensing that Huopoyan wasn't scared by the great reputation of Junzile and was instead full of fight, Yuanqi also put his worries away as he said smilingly, "Of course." "By the way, Brother Yun," Huopoyan lowered his voice suddenly as he asked in a hesitant tone, "why did Senior Bingyun leave you behind like this? Isn't this a very normal thing?" Yuanqi responded. "No, it is not." Huopoyan, however, shook his head. "I wouldn't feel anything strange about it if it was some other senior, but Senior Bingyun's treatment towards you? How should I put it? She basically doesn't treat you like a disciple from the younger generation. She has always been gentle and soft to you like a mother or an elder sister. That's how it seems to me at the least, which makes me feel so envious too. Therefore, I found her doing such a thing strange just now." Yuanqi was faintly startled and turned his face sideways unnaturally. While avoiding the gaze of the other party, he uttered in one breath, "Because she is a woman." Huopoyan. At this time, an abnormally chilly aura swept past their bodies. It was as if a sharp sword had scratched their souls all of a sudden. Yuanqi and Huopoyan simultaneously turned their heads around with the speed of lightning. A girl had appeared not that far away to the east at some point in time. She was dressed in snow-white clothes, had an exceedingly pretty appearance, and there was an old bronze sword on her back. Her whole self looked like a goddess who had come out of an ancient picture scroll. She actually had extremely beautiful eyes, but there was a dangerous, soul-piercingly cold light emitting from them. The successor of the sword's sovereign, Junzile. The moment their gazes came into contact with hers, it felt as if the tip of a sword was thrust at their throats. But Junzile turned her gaze away in the next instant and didn't spare them another glance. Her white clothes fluttered in the breeze and she had gone far away in an instant. Such a powerful aura! Huopoyan inhaled heavily. Could this be the formless sword intent that Master told me about last night? Yuanqi frowned. The clearly hatred-filled gaze and aura of Junzile just now made him feel a slight heaviness in his heart. Although the same thing would happen whenever Junzile saw him, the situation this time was different than earlier. "Brother Poyun," Yuanqi said with incomparable seriousness, "you need to be very careful when you fight against Junzile in a short while." I know," Huopoyan nodded heavily. "No, I mean to say that you need to be careful because she is going to attack you ruthlessly." "Ah," Huopoyan was surprised as he asked with incomprehension, "Why? Don't tell me you have forgotten that she was forced to apologize to me on her knees by my master earlier in the Snow Song realm. It was certainly the greatest shame for someone who was the successor of Sword Sovereign and the center of focus of the masses. Every time she saw me in the Eternal Heaven realm, she was looking at me with so much hatred, as if she was dying to hack me to pieces. It was just that she didn't get the opportunity to attack me, but she knows about the friendship between you and me and will very likely take out her anger on you." Yuanqi's tone was quite serious, which made Huopoyan raise his brows. He said hesitatingly, "That should not happen, right? Junzile is the successor of the Sword Sovereign and one of the extremely famous four god children of the eastern region. She would not stoop so low as to do such a thing. That would be unfitting for her identity and status, right? It's true that she is the successor of the Sword Sovereign, but she is also a woman in the end. Women just don't forget about their grudges. Phew, it seems that you don't have the experience of suffering a headache because of women." I thank Brother Yun for the warning. I will be careful." Huopoyan could only nod his head. Although he disapproved of Yuanqi's opinion, he still didn't ignore his advice completely because of his trust in Yuanqi, and he very carefully remembered his words. As they came to the conferred god stage area, Yuanqi immediately attracted countless gaze. Even all the great god emperors kept their gazes on him for a while. When he had first arrived in the god realm, it was only to meet Jasmine, and so he had intended to remain as low profile as possible, and not to catch the attention of anyone. However, he had very quickly alarmed the entire divine Ice Phoenix Sect, and had also become the direct disciple of the sect master. In the short period of a few years, due to Mu Xunian's exclusive pampering, he had gained such a standing that he almost stood below one person and above everyone else in the Snow Song realm. Upon arriving at the Eternal Heaven realm, he had not wished to draw others' attention. However, in the short period of less than 2 months, his name had spread far and wide, and he had surprised all the great realm kings and god emperors. After the battle the day before, even the entire eastern divine region was startled by his deeds. Given all the things that he had or had shouldered, it was seemingly already impossible for his life to be safe and calm any longer. He himself had felt it too, and perhaps it was his nature that led to such an outcome. Very soon, the Dragon Monarch and the 5 God Emperors had all arrived, and it was finally time for this day's conferred God battle to begin. They had already found out about the major event, but the Dragon Monarch and God Emperor Shishan had not left the Eternal Heaven realm yet. It was very clear that they were also truly interested in this session of the Eastern Divine Region's Profound God Convention. Perhaps they were interested in one or more participants in the convention. We will now have the first battle of the second round of Conferred Gods group. Huopoyan of the Flame God Realm versus Junzile, the successor of the Sword Sovereign. Junzile was from the Jasper Here Sword Pavilion, but Honorable Kui introduced her as the successor of the Sword Sovereign. It was obvious that the latter carried much more weight. On this day, the first battle to be held was of the Conferred Gods group. Following Honorable Kui's announcement, Huopoyan leapt into the air and landed on the Conferred God stage. He was holding devil-destroying sword in his hand, and the blazing golden crow flame had spread across his entire body down to the blade of his sword. He was already in battle mode the instant he entered the stage. People present at every corner of the Conferred God stage could sense the strong aura of the golden crow flame and his fighting will. This young man is good indeed. At the eastern seating area, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded his head as he praised generously. He has such achievements despite being from a middle star realm. He is so young but still mastered the use of the golden crow flame, which is considered the most difficult flame to control. Especially for him to not show any sign of cowardice when his opponent is as powerful person as the Sword Sovereign's successor shows that he will certainly have great success in the future. He is definitely praiseworthy. Even the Dragon Monarch nodded in agreement. Afterwards, he said in a declarative tone, "But it is a pity that he will certainly face defeat in this battle." Junzile's body flashed instantly, and as if she was being carried by a gentle breeze, lightly drifted over to the top of the Conferred God stage as she landed. But her preparation before the battle was different than Huopoyan, who had endless fighting will burning in his heart. She was standing quietly with an expressionless look on her cold face. She was still carrying the nameless sword, a sword she was unable to use, which belonged to Sword Sovereign on her back. She appeared as if she was isolated from the world and paid no attention to mortal lives. "Begin!" Hearing the order of Honorable Kui, the blaze on Huopoyan's body reached to a height of over 300 meters, causing most of the Conferred God stage to be dyed a faint golden color. However, Junzile still remained completely unaffected, and there wasn't the slightest alteration in her aura either. Even her beautiful and enchanting eyes didn't seem to be looking at Huopoyan. A big frown appeared on Huopoyan's face as he sensed her attitude of looking down upon him. But he was not enraged because of it, and instead his fighting will burned even more intensely. He let out a loud roar. "Huopoyan of the Flame God Realm asks for guidance." "Ha!" Scree among the 3 supreme flame possessors, the Golden Crow had the greatest burning and extermination power as well as the strongest sense of haughtiness and dignity, carrying the strongest Golden Crow bloodline in the history of the Flame God Realm. The nature of Huopoyan naturally also received the greatest influence by it. The bloodline would not show itself usually, but once its energy was stimulated, it would be triggered completely. An enormous flame image of the Golden Crow manifested itself behind Huopoyan as it spread its wings and issued a mighty cry. Boom, 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 dozens of streaks of Golden Crow flame burst apart simultaneously at this moment, blooming into dozens of pure golden fire lotuses. When the firelight of the lotuses grew strong to its limit, it seemed as if tens of suns had appeared in the sky above the Conferred God stage, which made it almost impossible for the countless experts present to dare look straight at them, as they felt shocked in their hearts. This aura, and the speed at which the profound strength of the flame is being unleashed, is he truly only at the 7th level of the divine spirit realm? A middle star realm king who cultivated a fire attribute, profound art, shouted in uncontrollable surprise. Furthermore, that is not an ordinary profound flame. It is none other than the Golden Crow flame that is far more difficult to control than an ordinary profound flame. No, the most difficult to control even among all the divine flames. It looks like this is his true strength. He was easily able to defeat Lu Chenyuan earlier, not because of the other party's carelessness or some sort of coincidence. Confronting Jun Zile, Huo Poyun didn't hold back in the least and released all the strength of the flame, causing countless experts to exclaim in admiration again and again. But on the contrary, Jun Zile hadn't even so much as moved her finger in front of Huo Poyun, and allowed Huo Poyun to unleash his profound strength to the limit. Only an undetectable, faint frown had appeared on her face during this whole time. She was clearly displaying a very deep arrogance, but Huo Poyun wasn't surprised or angered in the slightest, and slowly pointed the devil-destroying sword ahead. After which, the flame image of Golden Crow issued a sky-shaking cry once again. The auras of all the fire lotuses linked with each other, and came flying down towards Jun Zile like flaming meteors falling down from the outer space. Good, Huo really couldn't help but roar loudly as he stood up in excitement. You'll have to pay the price for underestimating Poyun, even if you are the successor of the Sword Sovereign. Yan Juhai also let out a low shout. An unusual look appeared in Yun Qi's eyes, too. He could sense clearer than anyone else how powerful Hu Poyun's move had become when the auras of the many fire lotuses linked with each other. Although the profound strength of Jun Zile exceeded Huo Poyun's by 3 small realms, the power of the Golden Crow flame that Huo Poyun possessed was absolutely extraordinary. Judging from the fact that he had easily defeated Lu Chenyuan, Yun Qi was absolutely sure that his strength was enough to rival the experts of the 9th level of the Divine Spirit realm. Jun Zile had been acting conceited and arrogant, and hadn't even budged an inch all along, nor did she release her aura. Now that Huo Poyun was able to fully accumulate and release the power of the flame due to having enough time for it, it would certainly be difficult for even someone like her to face it head-on. As the fire lotuses drew closer to her body, Jun Zile finally showed some movement. With a wave of her arm, a sharp sword appeared all of a sudden. The entire sword was shining and white. It was less than half an inch thick and less than 1.5 meters long. Despite the fact that whole sky was covered by Golden Crow flame, there was surprisingly no gold reflecting on it. This sword was called Misty Light, and was personally bestowed by Jun Wuming to Jun Zile. It was also the sword that he had himself refined for his future successor during his tens of thousands of years-long journey in search of a successor. Jun Zile lightly brandished Misty Light as soon as she unsheathed it. In a split second, all the sounds between heaven and earth disappeared suddenly. Even the rays of light darkened abruptly. In the field of vision of everyone present, only a flittering light could be seen rapidly streaking across, which seemed even more magnificent and dazzling than a shooting star. This streak of flittering light penetrated through one lotus after another, through space, and through the several layers of flame as it struck Huo Poyun in the chest, after which it pierced all the way through his chest. This flittering light was obviously inconceivably fast, but that moment when it penetrated through all the things in its way, it seemed as if the passage of time had completely slowed down. All the people, including those with the weakest cultivation here in the divine tribulation realm, clearly saw every single thing that happened when the flittering light had streaked across the air. Ding! The instant the flowing light bumped into the isolation barrier, it dispersed and disappeared in no time. The world suddenly returned to its normal state at this moment. The fire lotuses, including those that hadn't even come into contact with the flittering light, were totally cut into 2 halves and dissipated in the air. The blood from Huo Poyun's body spattered around as he let out a horrible shriek while being blown away forcefully. His body flew all the way out of the barrier and smashed onto the ground outside the conferred god stage. Once Jun Zile made her move, Huo Poyun instantly suffered a defeat. Stage became absolutely silent, and a dumbfounded look remained on everyone's face for a long while. Yun Yuner, amidst the quietness, a loud sound resounded like a thunderclap. Huo Ruli had no composure now to care about other things, as he rapidly flew over to Huo Poyun's side and quickly and carefully brought him back. Huo Poyun's chest and back were dyed in blood. Although his external injuries were small, his internal injuries were extremely severe. But fortunately, they weren't severe to the extent of being untreatable, which made Huo Ruli feel a bit calmer. However, when he suddenly saw the look in Huo Poyun's eyes, his relaxed heartstrings became several times tighter all of a sudden. Huo Poyun had lost consciousness. He wasn't groaning in pain due to his severely injured state, or even guiding his profound aura to suppress his injuries. Rather, he was lying there in an incomparably calm manner. His eyes were open, but as if they were covered by a thick layer of smoke, they had lost all luster and focus. It was as if he was in a dream. Seeing Huo Poyun grow for so long and as his master, how was it possible for Huo Ruli to not know his nature? He dealt with people or things with gentleness and sincerity, but had an extremely strong sense of dignity of the profound way. In particular, the inheritance of the Golden Crow and the Golden Crow flames had become his greatest pride as well as his reverse scale. It was easy to imagine how great the blow he had suffered was upon being instantly defeated, despite the fact that he had unleashed all the power of his Golden Crow flames. Even Huo Ruli had absolutely not expected such an outcome. "Yuner, it's Oik, it's totally okay," Huo Ruli said in as calm a voice as possible to comfort him. "She is the successor of the Sword Sovereign, so it's not at all disgraceful to be defeated by her. You've already done so well. You are Master's pride, and the pride of the Flame God realm too." Huo Poyun was still in a dazed state and didn't show any reaction. It was at this time that he heard Jun Zilei's ice-cold, disdainful voice. "HMPH, this is the strongest young practitioner of Flame God. In the end, he could only amount to this." "You..." Huo Ruli turned his head around in great anger, but no matter how furious he was in his heart, he couldn't let himself lose his temper. It was quiet at the conferred God stage, with everyone staring dumbfoundedly at the scene ahead. The power that Huo Poyun had displayed was so stunning that he had received praise from all the realm kings, and even from the topmost existences, such as the eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Dragon Monarch. But Jun Zilei had just used one swing of her sword to instantly shatter his flame, fighting will and pride, like a bubble. All the people from Flame God realm stood up. Each of them had their pupils quivering as they couldn't believe or accept such an outcome. Yuanqi also shrank his pupils slightly as stormy waves surfaced in his heart. So this is the strength of the Sword Sovereign's successor. This is the strength of the four god children of the eastern region. The sword move that instantly defeated Huo Poyun had contained such enormous might that it far, far surpassed Yuanqi's expectations. It meant that Jun Zilei's strength was far, far greater than he had estimated. It was evident that even Honorable Kui hadn't expected such an outcome. When he finally came to himself, he gave a deep glance at Jun Zilei and announced in a loud voice, "Huo Poyun is out of the bounds of the conferred God stage area and thus has fallen into the losers group. He will be entering the 4th round battle of the losers group tomorrow. Jun Zilei has won and will be entering the 3rd round battle of the conferred gods group day after tomorrow." Everyone had been certain that it was impossible for Huo Poyun to be Jun Zilei's opponent, but they had also really been looking forward to his performance while facing someone as strong as Jun Zilei. They had wanted to witness for themselves the ultimate limit of the strength of this absolute dark horse, but they hadn't thought that things would turn out like this. It was definitely not because of Huo Poyun being a very weak contestant. When he had unleashed the power of his flame, it had indeed stunned everyone after all. Instead, it was due to the fact that Jun Zilei was simply too powerful that he was defeated in such a way. She had gotten an easy win in all the battles earlier, so she hadn't displayed her true strength so far. The image of the sword light just now that had instantly defeated Huo Poyun and made the world seem as if it had frozen was still deeply imprinted in their minds, and they were not able to get it off their minds. With Huo Poyun severely injured, Huo Ruli no longer concerned himself with other things. He carried Huo Poyun along with him and swiftly flew away into the distance. The great elders of the Golden Crow Sect also stood up and followed behind him. Yan Juhai didn't follow after them and remained standing in place for quite a while. However, his face had anxiousness and uneasiness written all over it. Yuanqi lowered his brows. He had clearly sensed something odd from the unusual aura from Huo Poyun. He hesitated for a while before planning to go over and take a look at him, but Mu Bingyun stretched out her hand to pull him back. "Don't be distracted." Yuanqi slowly sat down, but he was feeling a heaviness in his heart. He had been sure that Jun Zilei would vent her anger and hatred in her fight with Huo Poyun, but he hadn't expected it to be done in such a way. By exerting absolute strength against the other party. That sword move also served to further increase Jun Zilei's extremely glorious reputation. Watching her slowly flying away from the conferred god stage like a fairy, with the old sword on her back, the young, profound practitioners present at the site felt as if they were looking up at a deity, despite them being from the same generation. If Jun Zilei was the sky, then they were existences as insignificant as mud or dust. Huanzhi had become well known throughout the Eastern Divine region since the day she had become the successor of the Sword Sovereign. At the same time, countless doubts were raised by people because of her being a woman. Later, she became one of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, which undoubtedly proved that the Sword Sovereign had made the right choice after all, as well as her aptitude as a profound practitioner. On this day, the whole Eastern Divine region once again witnessed and recognized the mightiness of the existence that the Sword Sovereign's successor of this generation was. Furthermore, it was just one move from her, which was obviously far from comparable to the extent of her true strength. I didn't think that Huanzhi's achievements in the way of the sword would have already reached this extent, Mu Bingyun sighed in a low voice. Perhaps her strength right now is not that far from Luo Changsheng either. Yun Qi raised his brows at once. Perhaps not that far. Could it be that someone as powerful as Huanzhi is still not a match for Luo Changsheng at all? Among the young generation of the Eastern Divine region, excluding the King realms, Luo Changsheng is absolutely an invincible existence, Mu Bingyun replied. A lot of rumors about him are so astonishing that they sound closer to legends. Luo Changsheng will be fighting in the next battle, so just see for yourself why he is called the strongest person among the young generation of the Eastern Divine region. Next, we'll have the second battle of the second round of Conferred Gods group. Luo Changsheng from Holy Eve's realm versus Lu Lengquan from Shrouding Sky realm. Luo Changsheng and Lu Lengquan were both part of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, and this was the first fight between the god children in the Conferred God battle. Following Honorable Kui's announcement, the gazes of all the people firmly fixed on the Conferred God stage. One was the strongest of the 4 god children, and the other was the weakest of the 4 god children, although both of them were members of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, and they had the same cultivation, the 10th level of Divine Spirit realm. There was such vast difference in their strengths that a large number of people considered it impossible for Lu Lengquan to overcome it and have any chance at winning this battle. 2 human figures appeared on the Conferred God stage at the same time and stood facing each other. Lu Lengquan had an extremely tall and broad physique. He was nearly 9 feet tall and so brawny that his body could be compared to Xia Yuanba in his youth. He had not released his profound strength yet, but a thick and heavy aura had already emerged ahead of him, giving the impression of a towering mountain in front of his body. On the other hand, Luo Changsheng was dressed in white garments. He had his black hair tied back, and there was an indistinct aura on his body. The skin of his face and neck was as tender, fair, and flawless liquor that of a young girl. Adding to his outstanding appearance, he clearly seemed like a frail scholar who had no experience or knowledge of the profound way. Both of the god children were quiet, and they had calm looks on their faces and in their eyes. There existed not the slightest tense atmosphere before a fierce battle, but there was a difference in the reasons for the 2 of them to be so calm. One was calm because of possessing absolute strength, and the other was calm because he knew that he had no chance of winning. Yun Qi was already extremely surprised after listening to Mu Bingyun's words just a moment ago. Seeing Lu Lengquan's expression at this time, he even felt shocked in his heart. They were both part of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, and Lu Lengquan shouldn't have too much of a difference in his strength compared to Huanzhi, even if he was the weakest among them. However, he had the attitude of being aware that he would certainly be defeated in front of Luo Changsheng even before they had started fighting. Just how strong was Luo Changsheng right now? Why would Mu Bingyun say that the rumors about him sounded closer to legends? Earlier, he had no interest in knowing the strength of the 4 god children of the Eastern region. But now that his objective had changed, they had become 4 great mountains in his path ahead that he had to cross at any cost. But he still had no idea about the true strength of these 4 god children. Begin! As soon as Honorable Kui ordered, the Conferred God stage immediately became completely quiet. Crack. Luo Changsheng's weapon appeared in his hand after a sound of lightning cracking. It was a long and broad sword with purple lightning encircling it. "Holy lightning sword," Mu Bingyun said in a low tone. "I didn't expect Luo Changsheng to have actually cultivated a lighting attribute profound art," Yun Qi said. "Yes and no." Mu Bingyun's befuddling words startled Yun Qi. "Brother Lengquan, please." Luo Changsheng stretched his other hand ahead. Contrary to the savage and domineering Luo Chang'an, Luo Changsheng was refined and courteous. Although he was allowing Lu Lengquan to make the first move, there was not the slightest bit of arrogance in his attitude. Instead, His words and expression displayed deep respect, such as one would give to their elder brother. "All right," Lu Lengchuan immediately accepted his proposal. He let out a low roar as yellow light erupted from his body. By the time the yellow light stabilized, it had taken the shape of a defensive barrier which was revolving around his body. "Ha!" Lu Lengchuan roared once again, as several streaks of the yellow, profound aura danced around in air like swimming dragons. After a few breaths' time, they yet again combined together to form the second layer of the defensive barrier. However, during this whole process, Luo Changsheng didn't interrupt him. Instead, he watched the other party calmly, or to be exact, waited for him to launch his attack with an indistinct, faint smile at the corners of his mouth. "Ah!" As Lu Lengchuan roared loudly for the last time, a shocking dragon cry resounded through the sky above. A third layer of the defensive barrier had formed around Lu Lengchuan, but this barrier didn't have the same faint color as the previous ones, and was instead a bright yellow image of a true dragon that was moving in circles around him. The thickness and heaviness of his aura suddenly increased by several times. All the people could even sense the dense aura of a true dragon. "This is..." A look of surprise surfaced on Yuanqi's face. "Glowing dragon's sacred barrier of the Lu clan and the shrouding sky realm," Mu Bingyun said in a low tone of voice. "He has inherited the divine blood of a primordial true dragon and cultivates an earth attribute profound art. As a result, he has extremely powerful defensive abilities, and his physique is as strong as profound steel. Now that Lu Lengchuan has also added the protection of glowing dragon's sacred barrier to his body, he will have an unparalleled ability to defend himself. Once all the three barriers have been formed, he would normally remain undefeated even when facing two opponents of the same level. Yuanqi, to let him form the three layers of the glowing dragon's sacred barrier in his presence, among all the conferred god candidates, only Luo Changsheng would have the strength and boldness to do such a thing. Not bad." At the eastern seating area, the dragon monarch nodded slightly. As the monarch of dragons, he naturally got interested in Lu Lengchuan, who was an inheritor of the bloodline of a primordial true dragon. As the triple-layered, glowing dragon's scared barrier formed completely, the aura around Lu Lengchuan underwent a thorough change. His whole body was glowing with yellow, and his skin, in particular, was actually reflecting bronze-like metallic luster. Lu Lengchuan stretched out his hands and took out an over 3-meter-long silver spear. This spear was called Sky Splitter, and the soul of a true dragon was sealed within it. It was one of the profound artifacts of the shrouding sky realm that have been famous for a long time in the eastern divine region. "Brother Luo, I admit that I'm not your opponent." Despite the fact that the triple-layered, glowing dragon's scared barrier was protecting him, Lu Lengchuan still had the same attitude of being prepared for certain defeat as before, while he spoke calmly. "But I really want to know whether young Master Changsheng is truly as mighty as the legends say. 50 breaths time. If Brother Luo can smash my triple-layered, glowing dragon's sacred barrier, in 50 breaths time, I'll have no choice but to admit defeat with heartfelt admiration." Lu Lengchuan's words caused an intense change in the expression of countless people that were present at the conferred god stage. It was acknowledged by everyone in the eastern divine region that Luo Changsheng was much stronger than Lu Lengchuan. Lu Lengchuan's age was almost twice that of Luo Changsheng, and so there was no doubt that Luo Changsheng far surpassed him in both talent and rate of growth too. Therefore, it would not be too surprising to people if Luo Changsheng could really defeat him in 50 breaths time. But the Lu Lengchuan standing in front of Luo Changsheng right now had the protection of the triple-layered, glowing dragon's sacred barrier. Smashing the triple-layered, glowing dragon's sacred barrier was absolutely going to be even more difficult than defeating Lu Lengchuan himself. The glowing dragon's sacred barrier had always been called the undefeatable sacred barrier in the eastern divine region, so it was easy to imagine just how powerful it was. Luo Changsheng, however, let out a faint laugh in response. "All right, Changsheng will, of course, try to do his best." "Good." Lu Lengchuan slightly nodded his head as a light suddenly flashed through his eyes. "Get ready to face my sky-splitting spear." Lu Lengchuan leapt to a height of over 300 meters, after which he soared downward with the spear thrust ahead. A tyrannical storm of profound strength was immediately generated on the tip of the spear and swept across the area below. It was as violent as the raging billows of an ocean, eliciting cries of surprise from the people present in the audience seating area. Lu Lengchuan had an extremely strong defensive power, but it definitely didn't mean that his destruction power was weak and incompetent. The might of this spear attack was powerful enough to make all the great realm kings change their expressions, as well as cause a look of fear to appear on the faces of countless young profound practitioners. Yuanqi's pupils also shrank visibly. This was Lu Lengquan's strength, who was considered the weakest among the four god children of the eastern region. Luo Changsheng slightly raised his head as the approaching swirl of profound energy made his clothes billow out and flutter. It was when the sky-splitting spear was less than 100 meters away from him that he finally released his profound energy, though only for an instant. An aura which was not fierce at all, but still abnormally domineering soared into the sky and suddenly slowed down the speed of the calamitous power that was sweeping down from the sky above. Following which, Luo Changsheng flew up into the sky and swung his sword horizontally. R.I.P. Lightning flashed for a moment, and then it seemed as if space had been cut apart by his sword. The storm of energy that had been generated by Lu Lengquan was thoroughly cut into two halves by that flash of lightning, like a river that had been divided into two streams. The separated halves flitted past the two sides of Luo Changsheng, not even coming into contact with the edge of his clothes. In the next instant, Luo Changsheng's speed increased dramatically as he swiftly jumped upwards. He made his holy lightning sword directly clash with the energy carried by the sky-splitting spear, diminishing its power. An enormous sound resounded like that of thunder shaking the air and the sky as the sky-splitting spear was heavily struck away, and Lu Lengquan was also forced to flip in midair. But it was at this time that Luo Changsheng's figure suddenly appeared on his left side like a ghost, and his holy lightning sword casually stabbed at the glowing dragon's lightning barrier. Swish! Despite the fact that he had clearly just swung the sword casually, it unleashed such an amount of lightning that it blotted out the sky and the sun. The glowing dragon's sacred barrier sunk in all of a sudden, and the flying image of dragon spasmed immediately as it let out a painful groan. Lu Lengquan let out a muffled sound. He fell down rapidly, as if a meteorite had exploded on him and heavily smashed onto the conferred god stage. Yuanqi's body jolted all of a sudden. Mu Bingyun was sitting at his side and immediately sensed his movement. She gave him a sideways glance, with a slight look of worry on her face. She knew that the fight between Lu Lengquan and Luo Changsheng would certainly deal a very big blow to Yuanqi. They had only exchanged blows for the first time, and it was evident that Yuanqi was already unable to remain calm. Four god children of the eastern region and conferred god candidates were two entirely different concepts. The four youngsters who had been conferred the title of god children represented four legends among the young generation of the eastern divine region. The might of Lu Lengquan's spear attack was like a thunderbolt descending to the world below, while Luo Changsheng's sword attack was light and slow, as if he was just swinging it casually. But the moment the two of them collided against each other, it was Lu Lengquan who was in a disadvantageous position. Lu Lengquan quickly flipped and stabilized his posture. With the glowing dragon's sacred barrier protecting him, there was not the slightest injury on his body, and the glowing dragon's sacred barrier had not taken any damage either. He once again floated up in the air, as he said with a faint smile while looking at Luo Changsheng, "You'd better use all of your strength. Otherwise, even if you're young Master Changsheng, it will be impossible for you break open my glowing dragon's sacred barrier in a short." Lu Lengquan's voice paused abruptly. He suddenly lowered his head to look at the place under his feet. A mass of deep purple lightning was spinning there. It was deeply embedded into the third layer of the barrier and had not dissipated yet. Lu Lengquan's pupils shrank as if they were pricked by a pin, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his whole face. He inhaled heavily at the scene before his eyes. Following a slight cry of a dragon, the lightning left on the barrier was somehow eliminated, and the third layer of the barrier quickly recovered to its original state. However, Lu Lengquan was no longer smiling, and his face had quite a stiff expression. As expected of the glowing dragon's scared barrier, it indeed deserves its reputation. Luo Changsheng let out a light sigh. It would be definitely a bit difficult to break open Brother Lengquan's defense in a short period of time by solely relying on Holy Lightning Sword. In that case, Brother Lengquan, I ask you to be careful. While speaking in a voice as gentle as a cool breeze, Luo Changsheng slowly spread open his arms. The Holy Lightning Sword in his left hand flashed explosively, as a battle axe over 2 meters long appeared in his right hand. The battle axe was completely jade green in color. In the moment it appeared, a fierce wind swept across the conferred god stage without any signs beforehand, and the whistling sound made by it had as much impact on the surroundings as the air-shaking dragon cry from Lu Lengchuan. "Divine Wind Battle Axe," Mu Bingyun said. "Holy Lightning Sword, Divine Wind Battle Axe." Thunderous lightning was flashing on the left and windstorm was blowing through the right. Luo Changsheng was standing in between wind and lightning, appearing like the divine child of heaven. Witnessing such a scene, the eyeballs and nerves of all the people present quivered uncontrollably. "He cultivates both wind and lightning attribute profound arts?" Yun Qi asked in surprise. Mu Bingyun didn't say anything in reply. Lu Lengchuan subconsciously took half a step back as every vein on his body bulged. He kept his body in such an extremely tense state for a few breaths' time before finally relaxing his body. "Bring it on," Lu Lengchuan called out lightly. He took a step forward and instantly moved through space as he appeared right before Luo Changsheng. The sky-splitting spear struck straight at the other party, causing space to compress due to its force all of a sudden. The name, sky-splitting, meant to split the sky. Although it couldn't actually cut through the sky, it absolutely had enough power to destroy even an unimaginably high mountain. Bang, the divine wind battle axe stretched out of the void and firmly blocked the sky-splitting spear. The spear had such a force behind it, it was as if it was going to make the sky collapse, but at this moment, its movement was completely stopped in midair. The fierce whistling wind generated by the enormous strength contained within it had now disappeared without a trace. Lu Lengchuan's expression didn't change. Taking advantage of the fact that he didn't have to bother about the remnant force of the storm produced by his opponent's weapon because of the glowing dragon's sacred barrier, he instantly flipped his body and once again smashed the sky-splitting spear down. Bang, bang, bang! Lu Lengchuan attacked with the spear 3 times in succession, each time more malevolently than his previous attack. However, all of his attacks were warded off by Luo Changsheng with a single hand in an extremely smooth manner. When the spear and battle axe collided against each other for the 3rd time, Lu Lengchuan's entire body shook intensely, and he immediately lost his balance. Luo Changsheng finally moved his left hand, which was at his back this whole time, as the holy lightning sword, which carried fine streaks of lightning on it, was thrust at Lu Lengchuan's chest. Snap, as if myriad glass pieces had shattered into pieces beside their ears. Those in the audience with relatively low cultivations covered their ears in pain. The glowing dragon's sacred barrier before Lu Lengchuan sank in deeply upon being hit by the holy lightning sword. Despite the fact that he was protected by the 3 layers of the barrier, Lu Lengchuan clearly sensed the pain of his body being stabbed. Greatly frightened in his heart, he waved the sky-splitting sword fiercely and retreated as far as he could in an instant. He lowered his head to look at the barrier around his chest, which was still in a sunken state. There were dozens of fine cracks surrounding the sunken part, and countless streaks of lightning were wreaking havoc within it. Due to those seemingly tiny streaks of lightning, not only was his barrier unable to completely recover to its normal state, even though he was speedily channeling his profound energy, the damage was extending to the undamaged area little by little instead. Lu Lengchuan was quite surprised to see such a thing happen. In front of him, Luo Changsheng had already made his first move in this battle. He crisscrossed his sword and battle axe, immediately generating a powerful storm on the conferred god stage. Yun Qi knitted his brows as he unconsciously gnashed his teeth. Luo Changsheng had not only cultivated both and lightning attribute profound arts, he could actually display their powers at the same time. Furthermore, he was using 2 completely different kinds of weapons simultaneously. Be it the simultaneous use of wind and lightning or sword and battle axe, his movements and execution of the arts were smooth and natural. It seemed as if they were all part of his body. As the sword and battle axe crisscrossed, wind and lightning produced sounds together, giving off a pleasant feeling. The sound produced by the battle axe's wind and the sword's lightning might be pleasant to the audience, but it was nothing less than a fearsome nightmare as far as Lu Lengchuan was concerned. Lu Lengchuan totally gave up on attacking any further and put his all effort into defending himself. But he was barely able to hold on for a few breaths' time when the sky-splitting spear was once again firmly struck away, and the fierce wind generated by the divine wind battle axe swept over the glowing dragon's sacred barrier. Boom! An enormous sound like the ringing sound of a heavenly bell resounded across the place, and the glowing dragon's sacred barrier instantly deformed by a great extent. A crack quickly ran across the barrier and extended to most of its area in no time. The image of the guardian dragon let out a long, painful cry, and Lu Lengchuan also let out a muffled voice as he got blown far, far away into the distance. He staggered as he landed on the ground, but before he could stabilize his posture, a world-annihilating storm with dazzling lightning mixed within it immediately engulfed him mercilessly. Swish, 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 swish. As the wind and lightning fused with each other, they transformed into countless streaks of lightning and wind blades. They brushed past the glowing dragon-scared barrier and disappeared soundlessly upon bumping into the barrier at the edge of the conferred god stage. Luo Changsheng was, however, still standing in place, as if he had not moved all along. There was no wind or lighting being emitted from his battle axe and sword, and he had a faint smile on his gentle-looking face. On the other hand, a dark and uncertain expression surfaced on Lu Lengchuan's face. He let out a big breath, and then once again lifted his sky-splitting spear, but he had only raised his arm halfway when he suddenly heard a light ping sound. Following a muffled and desperate dragon cry, the countless cracks on the barrier burst open at the same time all of a sudden. Immediately, the image of the dragon was rooted like a bubble shredded to pieces, as it turned into golden light and scattered across the sky. What? At the seating area of the shrouding sky realm, most of the people stood up suddenly. There were such intense fluctuations in their expressions, as if they had seen something absurd. Lu Lengchuan's arm froze in place. His strongest means of defense was so easily torn to pieces by Luo Changsheng's lightning and wind blades. Although there were still 2 layers of the defensive barrier present around his body, the third layer was the true, glowing dragon-scared barrier. Its protection power was far superior to that of the first and second layers combined. His pupils shrank slightly in fear, and after a long time passed, his raised arm dropped down slowly. The tip of the sky-splitting spear firmly hit the ground, issuing a heavy sound of collision. Sigh. After letting out a heavy sigh, Lu Lengchuan retracted the remaining 2 layers of the barrier around him. He sighed with emotion as he looked at Luo Changsheng. When I first fought with you 4 years ago, I deeply felt that you had fearsome strength. I also had the self-awareness that the difference between our strengths would only get bigger and bigger, but I didn't expect you to have actually. The sky-splitting spear disappeared from Lu Lengchuan's hand, as he said in an extremely weird tone, "You are simply a monster." "Ha ha ha," Luo Changsheng laughed. "I thank Brother Lengchuan for the praise. However, I should also be thanking Brother Lengchuan today for finally letting me experience such a delightful battle. It's just that it has only been a short time since we started the battle, and it seems that Brother Lengchuan doesn't have the will to fight any longer." Lu Lengchuan let out a laugh but didn't say anything. He was very clear that Luo Changsheng was calling their fight delightful just to give him face. He was incomparably sure that Luo Changsheng had not used his whole strength yet. He turned around to look at Honorable Kui as he calmly said, "I admit defeat." On the conferred god stage, it was extremely rare for the contestants to admit defeat. Even if such a thing happened, Honorable Kui would certainly ask the contestant whether they really wanted to do so. But seeing Lu Lengchuan admitting defeat with such a calm attitude, he didn't say anything further to him. Nodding his head slightly, he immediately announced the result. Lu Lengchuan has admitted defeat and hence fallen into the losers group. He will be participating in the 4th round of losers group tomorrow. Luo Changsheng has won. He will be entering the 3rd round of conferred gods group the day after tomorrow. As the 2 great god children left the stage, the audience seating area became boisterous and remained that way for a long while. Huanzhi continued staring at Lu Lengchuan and Luo Changsheng, stormy waves emerging in his heart. Lu Lengchuan's strength was already powerful enough to greatly shock him. The first time he launched the attack with his spear, Huanzhi had felt an irresistible sense of pressure, and truly realized that he was absolutely worthy of being one of the Eastern region's 4 god children. However, such a powerful person as Lu Lengchuan actually suffered such an utter defeat against Luo Changsheng. When Lu Lengchuan was leaving the conferred god stage, his breathing had grown rough, and his aura was in a slightly disordered state. It was evident that although the glowing dragon's sacred barrier was powerful, it consumed an extremely large amount of profound strength. He also had to exhaust quite a bit of profound strength in order to exchange blows with Luo Changsheng. On the other hand, there was not the slightest change on the face of, or in the breathing of, Luo Changsheng. His aura was like still water that didn't have any ripples appearing on it. So this is Luo Changsheng. Why is there such a great difference in their strengths when both of them are part of the same 4 god children? Huanzhi murmured absent-mindedly. They were both clearly at the 10th level of the divine spirit realm, as well as god children of the eastern region, yet it seemed as if they were at completely different levels. Mu Bingyun shifted her eyes to him, as she said in a light tone, "What if I tell you that you have not seen the full strength of Luo Changsheng yet?" Jun Zile and Shui Yingyu might be able to force him to use his full strength, but it is certainly impossible for Lu Lengquan. Yun Qi, Luo Changsheng doesn't only cultivate wind and lightning attribute profound arts, he also cultivates earth attribute profound arts. He cultivates a total of 3 kinds of profound arts. Mu Bingyun told Yun Qi about an incomparably fearsome fact in a soft voice. At the same time, he also practices the way of the sword, and his sword intent, sword aura, astral sword, and sword formation have all reached great heights, only taking his achievements in the way of the sword in consideration. A large number of people think that he wouldn't even lose someone as proficient in the way of the sword like Jun Zile. Besides, his attainments in the field of profound formations amazed countless realm kings of the upper star realms many years ago. He must have become even more skilled now. His mental power extraordinary high too. Is this all true? Yun Qi almost didn't dare to believe his own ears. In the practice of profound way, one should solely focus on the right way of cultivation. It is a great taboo to be too greedy for power and take shortcuts to increase your cultivation. Even if a profound practitioner has outstanding talent and could cultivate several kinds of profound strength, they would normally choose to cultivate only one of them. Let's assume that someone forcibly practices 2 or 3 kinds of profound strength, but when it comes to unleashing their power, they would be able to unleash only one of them. Using more than one kind of profound strength at the same time could very easily throw their profound energy into disorder and cause damage to their own body. But he is Luo Changsheng, such a monstrous existence that might not appear again, even after 100,000 years. Mu Bingyun's words left Yun Qi silent for a long while. "Yun Qi," Mu Bingyun said all of a sudden. "Last night, I communicated with your master. She told me that your objective has changed, and you have returned to the eternal heaven realm in order to win the conferred god battle. Could it be that you want to place first in the conferred god battle?" Yun Qi nodded his head. "Then how confident are you in attaining your objective?" Mu Bingyun asked while sighing in her heart. "Yesterday, I was still a bit confident about it. However, today..." Yun Qi closed his eyes as he said in a helpless tone, "Frankly speaking, I don't think that I stand any chance. I didn't underestimate these conferred god candidates, but I did completely misestimate the strength of the 4 god children of the eastern region." Mu Bingyun, Luo Changsheng, even if his true strength was limited to what we saw just now, it is still impossible for me to be his opponent. It is almost hopeless for me to even win against Lu Lengquan, who has just suffered defeat at his hands. Yun Qi's voice was very calm, and the fact was indeed as he said. He was frightened by Jun Zile's sword attack that had instantly defeated Hu Poyun. But the fight between Luo Changsheng and Lu Lengquan just now had thoroughly annihilated his all-confidence and hope. "Palace Master Bingyun, how strong are Jun Zile and Shui Yingyu compared to Lu Lengquan?" Yun Qi asked. "Far stronger." Mu Bingyun gave him a brief and straightforward reply. Yun Qi didn't say another word. He lowered his brows as he seemed to be thinking something. "Ha, as expected of young Master Changsheng of your eastern divine region. Although we didn't get to see him using earth attribute profound strength, just being able to use wind and lightning simultaneously with such ease is already an amazing feat," the Dragon Monarch said. "His strength will likely exceed the level of the divine spirit realm when he uses his full strength. There may be a comparatively smaller number of people who have such outstanding talent that they could cultivate more than one kind profound strength, but it is not like such people are rare. However, those who can use more than one kind of profound strength simultaneously are the rarest of the rare. To be able to cultivate as well as use 3 kinds of profound strength like Luo Changsheng in the last 100,000 years, only one person other than him has been able to do so in my eastern divine region." The Eternal Heaven Emperor nodded with a faint smile. Not only is inherent variant physique needed to accomplish such a thing, extremely great aptitude and comprehension ability is required as well. Even this old man doesn't dare estimate the heights he will reach in the future. You have Luo Changsheng among the males and Shui Meiyin among the females. Considering the talent of these 2, your eastern divine region will be ushering in an era of prominence," the Dragon Monarch said smilingly. No, Your Highness, you are forgetting someone," God Emperor Shishin said all of a sudden. contrary to all other people who had their attention fixed on Luo Changsheng and were marveling at his strength. His gaze had been sweeping over Yuanqi for the most part. He said in an unhurried voice, "The primal chaos is such a vast place, and trillions upon trillions living creatures exist within it, so it is not rare for a monster to appear. But a monster that can crush a profound practitioner of the last mid-stage of the divine spirit realm with a cultivation of the divine tribulation realm, tusk, let alone in 100,000 years. Only he alone has pulled off such a thing in the million-years-long history of your eastern divine region. Right. Oh no, I'm wrong. I remember this boy saying that he is from the lower realms, so he would not be considered a person from your eastern divine region, huh?" The expression of the eternal heaven god emperor turned stiff, but the dragon monarch faintly smiled in response. His smile contained unfathomable mysteriousness. "Now we will have the third battle of this round, Shui Meiyan of the Glazed Light Realm versus Meng Duangxi of the Flying Star Realm." Yuanqi raised his head while lost in thoughts, and his attention once again returned to the conferred god stage. This was a battle that Yuanqi was extremely concerned about too. He wanted to see for himself how Shui Meiyan, who was only at the first level of the divine spirit realm, was able to advance through the competition until now, and even managed to stay in the conferred gods group. Shui Meiyan was still dressed in the familiar long skirt that was dark as night, and there was an exceedingly cute butterfly-shaped sash tied around her extremely delicate and slender waist. She was standing on the conferred god stage, but her existence was incompatible with the atmosphere of the stage. Especially her slightly tilted, beautiful neck, faintly visible dimples, and her beautiful smile, which looked sweet and lovely. Moreover, she was also subconsciously emitting such a bewitching aura that should not belong to someone of her age. She didn't show the slightest sign of the nervousness that one should feel before a battle, and there were even many youngsters who were staring at her foolishly. On the other hand, Meng Duangxi, who had absolute superiority with respect to profound strength, had a serious look on his face. As soon as he got on the stage, a sword light flashed in front of him on his side, and under the influence of his surging profound aura, the blade of his sword slowly fluctuated like a stream of water, as astonishing force was generated from it. "Begin," Honorable Kui raised his brows. "Big brother, I ask for guidance." Shui Meiyan turned over her hand, and a blue flickering light extended to both sides of her hand. Immediately, a thin and long aqua-blue silhouette appeared in her hand. "Spear," Yuanqi uttered in a low voice. The spear was as bright and limpid as crystal, and emitting a dreamy, blue-colored glow like that of an ocean. The body of the spear was extremely thin, and was no more than roughly half an inch thick at a glance. Hence, it could be completely held up by the small and exquisite hand of Shui Meiyan with ease. But the spear was extraordinarily long, more than 3 meters in length. It was longer than even the sky-splitting spear of Lu Lengquan. The scene of Shui Meiyan, who was barely 1.5 meters tall, holding such a long thing in her hand, had quite a visual impact. The inheritance of the glazed light realm is from a divine beast called glazed light butterfly that belonged to the ancient era. It is said that this spear has been made from a strand of the glazed light butterfly's wing, and it has a special name called illusory mental butterfly language. As a wisp of the true soul of the glazed light butterfly is contained within it, no one has been able to use the true strength of this spear until now, but it actually took the initiative to recognize Shui Meiyan as its owner. "I ask for guidance too." Meng Duangxi nodded his head. Confronting such an opponent, although his mind was in an extremely stable state, he still acted a bit unnaturally. Despite the fact that his cultivation was 8 small realms higher than his opponent, it was Meng Duangxi who made the first move. In this battle, or to be exact, in any battle, it was a great taboo to take your opponent lightly. A fierce wind whistled through the conferred god stage, and the wind generated by his sword aura instantly sealed off all the escape routes around Shui Meiyan, like a heavy rain that had suddenly begun to pour down. Unlike Yuanqi, he had personally witnessed how Shui Meiyan was able to win against her opponents in the previous 2 battles. Therefore, he had started to launch quick and powerful attacks from the get-go. He wanted to immediately suppress Shui Meiyan with his absolute superiority of profound strength, and even defeat her if possible. This was also the most appropriate strategy against someone like Shui Meiyan, as her profound strength cultivation was indeed her weakest point. If she were to face her opponent head-on, she would immediately get beaten by Meng Duangxi. Shui Meiyan looked a bit tense as a slight flurried expression appeared on her face. A blue light flashed on her body, after which she was found flying up in the air gracefully. The illusory mental butterfly language also moved about following her petite body and swung forward in front of her, forming a small-sized, profound formation that was shining with dreamy blue light. Crash, as the storm generated by Meng Duengxi's sword aura blew across the sky and swept down, it left countless black marks in its wake. But the figure of Xue Meiyan, the target of the attack, gradually disappeared in the midst of the storm. In the sky behind Meng Duengxi, Xue Meiyan's figure appeared like a spirit butterfly. There was a profound formation shining with blue light at her back like the one from earlier. What a movement skill! Yuanqi couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She had moved from one place to another instantly as if she had teleported, but the skill she had executed was even faster than tearing open space to teleport, and had an illusory aspect to it too. Apparently, even the profound strength of the divine spirit realm was far from sufficient to tear open the space of the god realm. "It's the illusory butterfly dance," Mu Bingyun explained. "Similar to the moon-splitting cascade of our snow song realm, it is a movement skill that is extremely difficult to practice successfully." Her voice paused for a bit before she added, "At the least, Xue Yingyu has not been successful in perfecting it yet." Yuanqi, Meng Duengxi turned around in an instant, and at the same time, Xue Meiyan walked in the sky as she lightly waved her thin spear. A wisp of faint blue light spilled down, after which it instantly transformed into an enormous water curtain as it came falling onto Meng Duengxi. The force emitting from the water curtain was not that bad, but it didn't make Meng Duengxi feel the slightest pressure. After all, the water attribute attacks were publicly recognized to have the least offensive power. Besides, it was an attack from a little girl whose profound strength was inferior to him by 8 realms. Meng Duengxi didn't even give her attack a proper look, as he tore the water curtain into 2 halves with a casual swing of his sword. Xue Meiyan continued to lightly move around in midair. As the illusory mental butterfly language swung again and again, blue wisps of light intersected each other and generated water curtains one after another. When the many water curtains overlapped on one another as they fell over Meng Duengxi, the power of the attack possessed an earth-shattering force. Although the water curtains posed no threat to him, and he wouldn't be injured even if they all were to hit his body, it would be a serious obstruction to his line of sight and aura. Moreover, the many layers of the water curtain overlapped together had already made it impossible for him to see anything in his surroundings as they got closer and closer to him. Despite facing such a situation, Meng Duengxi didn't change his expression. He flew up into the air and slashed horizontally with his sword. Following a series of tearing sounds, 10-odd water curtains were torn apart at the same time, and water spilled around like torrential rain. But there were still many more layers of water curtain above him as far as he could see, with no trace of Xue Meiyan's figure. Meng Duengxi raised his brows. Suddenly, he soared into the sky at an even faster speed as his sword pierced through the air in his way. After a series of explosions, he clearly felt that his sword had pierced dozens of water curtains at the least. Just as he had expected, these dozens of water curtains burst apart with a loud bang and spilled down into the surroundings in the form of even denser torrential rain. But even when all these water curtains exploded, there were still more layers of water curtain overlapped on each other in the sky above him, and he could still not see Xue Meiyan's figure. Even her aura had disappeared at some point in time. She had so thoroughly disappeared that he couldn't sense her existence at all. Meng Duengxi was greatly alarmed in his heart. What is going on here? How come there is no end to these water curtains? At least 50 layers of water curtains would be required in order to cut off her aura to such an extent. How did she manage to do such a thing in an instant? As Meng Duengxi was feeling apprehensive, his gaze shifted downward. He was immediately shocked by what he saw. The area around him below had actually turned into a vast body of water. He couldn't see Xue Meiyan, the conferred god stage, or the audience seating area. Waves of water were rolling about under his feet, and dozens of layers of water curtains were present above him in the sky. He just realized suddenly that he had been unknowingly trapped inside a domain of heavenly water. After being surprised at his current situation, Meng Duengxi quickly calmed down. A faint, confident smile surfaced at the corner of his mouth as he talked to himself. I have long heard that the glazed light realm had such a divine art of controlling heavenly water that it is considered unrivaled under heaven, however. The one using it right now is someone with the low, profound strength of the first level of divine spirit realm. As such, although the domain is powerful, it is impossible to truly keep me trapped inside it. He let out a low shout as his profound aura surged again, and the sword in his hand immediately turned into an over 3-meter-long astral form. His figure flashed as he rushed to the water area ahead, and just a swing of his sword released 9 streaks of sword light. Boom bang! Immediately, the water area crazily burst apart as if lightning had caused the water in the surrounding area to gush fiercely like raging billows. Huge waves surged one after another furiously, but were then completely annihilated in an instant. Meng Duengxi's lips revealed a faint smile, but the expression on his face became stiff at once. It was because there was another water area present after the one he had destroyed, and his sword attack had been unable to cut open the heavenly water domain either. It was at this time that the heavenly water domain finally unleashed its full might. 10,000 waves surged forward instantly and swept over Meng Duengxi like countless angry flying dragons. Meng Duengxi let out a snort. His sword flew in a semicircular motion like a rainbow and exterminated the sea dragon-like raging bellows before they could get close to him. Imperceptible to him, a pleasant sensation of rebuking angrily at an ocean surged within his heart. He loudly shouted and charged ahead to face the incoming waves similar to a flood dragon. He slashed at the raging billows again and again, making the ocean retreat continuously. Very soon, he felt the heavenly water domain begin to tremble. He focused his mind even more as he started to strike the waves and the water body around him with increasingly greater power in order to completely tear the heavenly water domain into shreds. The trembling of the world around him grew more and more intense, and it was evident that the heavenly water domain was on the verge of collapse. A few moments later, all the water curtains and billowing waves finally dispersed, and then in the short period of an instant, they disappeared without a trace. The place in front of Meng Duengxi's eyes suddenly became clear as he heard the deafening voice of Honorable Kui. Meng Duengxi has left the conferred God stage and consequently fallen into the losers group. He will be participating in the 4th round of the losers group tomorrow. Xue Meiyin has won. She will be entering the 3rd round of the conferred gods group. Meng Duengxi was standing in place with a blank expression. He remained in a daze for a long while before he slowly turned around. He was presently high in the sky, and it was the vast audience seating area under his feet. He was already 150 kilometers away from the conferred god stage area, which was quite a distance from the place where he was supposed to be. There was no sword held in his hand, as it was actually lying quietly at the center of the conferred god stage. Not that far away from his beloved sword, Xue Meiyin was standing gracefully with a faint, sweet smile on her face. Meng Duengxi was in a completely dazed state, as if he was still trapped inside the illusion and unable to wake up anytime soon. Duengxi that although he got himself trapped inside the special heavenly water domain of the glazed light realm, he hadn't lost his composure and had thoroughly destroyed the very famous heavenly water domain with his absolute strength. But in the eyes of others, Meng Duengxi suddenly froze in place after annihilating the second water curtain attack from Xue Meiyin. Soon after, the sword he was holding slipped out of his hand as it dropped to the conferred god stage. Then, as if he had been possessed by a devil, he began to move about in the air while waving his arm in a disordered manner. But his eyes were just staring ahead blankly as if he was mentally deficient, and they had lost their focus. Very soon he had begun to dance within the conferred god stage area, which had only come to a stop just now. Leaving the conferred god stage area meant losing the battle. Meng Duengxi descended from the sky and silently left. Be it his body or soul, both were swaying at this moment. He had lost. He had lost to Xue Meiyin, who was only at the 1st level of the divine spirit realm. He didn't even know how exactly he had lost the battle. Xue Meiyin possessed an extremely terrifying mental power, which could control others' minds. He was naturally well aware of this point, and had also made enough preparations against it. But he hadn't even sensed his mind being invaded by her mental power all along. He had no idea when his mind was controlled by her. The 3rd battle of conferred gods group came to an end in such a way. Meng Duengxi of the 9th level of the divine spirit realm lost to Xue Meiyin of the 1st level of the divine spirit realm. Considering profound strength alone, it was absolutely impossible for Xue Meiyin to be Meng Duengxi's opponent. However, she had an absolutely terrifying mental power, which utterly crushed an opponent of such enormous strength that she originally had no chance of surpassing him. "Have you understood her strength now?" Mu Bingyun asked. It is already an unprecedented thing for a 15-year-old divine spirit realm profound practitioner to exist. But at the same time, she also possesses variant soul and a mental power so strong that it completely doesn't conform to common sense. Although she is unable to perfectly cultivate three kinds of profound strength, as Luo Changsheng has accomplished by cultivating wind, lightning, and earth attribute profound strengths. If she was the same age as him, her overall strength would likely be enough to crush someone as strong as Luo Changsheng on this conferred god stage. Yun Qi nodded his head, but didn't say anything. In the fourth battle, Xu Yingyu fought against Kao Feng. There was no suspense about the outcome. She easily obtained victory as expected. The four conferred gods group battles that were scheduled for this day had already ended, but the audience watching the battles were still greatly shocked by them. Junzile instantly defeating Hu Poyan with one sword move, Luo Changsheng casually destroying Lu Lengchuan's golden dragon's sacred barrier, Shui Meiyin completely defeating Meng Duengxi, whose cultivation was higher than her by 8 small realms. None of these battles failed to make all the profound practitioners of the Eastern Divine region tremble in deep shock. In particular, those young, profound practitioners who considered their cultivation outstanding were so shaken that it was as if they had been hit by stormy waves. After a short period of repair and maintenance, it was time for the fierce battle of the losers group to start. In these next 4 battles of the losers group, 4 people out of the top 16 would be defeated, and their journey in the conferred god battle would come to a stop. Now we will have the first battle of the losers group. Yun Qi of the Snow Song Realm versus Wu Guike of the Divine Martial Realm. This battle had also attracted the attention of countless people in the Eastern Divine region. But the reason it had become the focus of their attention was absolutely not because of the greatly reputed Wu Guike, but his opponent, Yun Qi. It was undoubtedly a miracle for Shui Meiyin to defeat Meng Duengxi, who was 8 small realms higher than her in cultivation. But there was not the least bit of doubt that the most shocking and the most unbelievable scene of the conferred god battle so far was Yun Qi obtaining a complete victory against Luo Chang'an the previous day. His boldness in completely not being afraid of the Holy Eve's realm, his method of taking revenge that could very well be called cruel, and surpassing the great difference in profound strengths, which was as huge as a whole big realm, showed his bizarre strength that was contrary to their common sense. They all were eagerly waiting to see whether his success was going to be short-lived and was only possible because of some reason. Or would he continue to create another miracle that should be impossible to happen normally? Wu Guike was already standing on the conferred god stage. He seemed to have a lofty attitude, but there was a slightly displeased look on his face. There was no one who could understand his hatred for Yun Qi, which was absolutely 10 million times stronger than that of Junzile. Junzile felt hatred for him because she was insulted by having to kneel in front of him. On the other hand, it would be difficult for Wu Guike to vent the hatred in his heart, even if he personally chopped Yun Qi up into hundreds or thousands of pieces. However, Yun Qi still had the proof of the 2 greatest wrongdoings of his life. Every time he thought of this, he would feel so suffocated by the humiliation he felt that his heart and liver would be on the verge of exploding. Go now, be sure to be careful. The profound arts the divine martial realm cultivates have an extremely hard and fierce nature, so make use of the moon-splitting cascade as much as possible to avoid a frontal confrontation, Mu Bingyun warned. Amen, Yun Qi nodded his head and landed on the conferred god stage in one bound. The corners of Wu Guike's brows visibly twitched at once when he caught sight of Yun Qi. Yun Qi had always been a nobody in his eyes. No, he couldn't even be considered a nobody in his opinion. He was just trash that was cheating by using underhanded means to coerce him into doing his bidding. He wouldn't want to spare another glance at such a shitty person, even if he had dirt on him. But now he had actually become his opponent in the conferred god battle. Begin, Honorable Kui ordered in a cold voice. Great young Master Wu, we're truly fated, huh? Yun Qi said in a moderate voice. You don't deserve to be my opponent. Wu Guike slightly gnashed his teeth. Heh! Yun Qi let out a low laugh as a grim light flashed through his eyes. Bang! An inconceivably stormy blast of aura erupted from Yun Qi suddenly, as he had immediately activated the rumbling heaven state. The strength of his aura instantly shot up at an extremely fast rate. As he waved his arm, the heaven-smiting sword appeared within his hand, and the profound energy emitting from his body speedily turned a faint red color, as if he was dyed in blood. Perhaps it was because he had been stimulated upon witnessing the strength of Junzile. Lu Lengchuan, and Shui Yingyu, and wanted to urgently let loose his power that he chose to immediately be in his strongest state. At the audience seating area, all the people had surprised looks on their faces. The earth-shaking change in his profound aura in the very short time of an instant made them all almost subconsciously think that there was something wrong with their spirit sense. Standing in front of Yuanqi, Wu Guike clearly swayed for a moment when his body got struck by the typhoon-like energy waves that had emitted from Yuanqi, which made him feel great shock in his heart. He actually felt suffocation, and quite a heavy suffocation at that. How is this possible? When he was feeling apprehensive, Yuanqi's figure flashed all of a sudden, and a vermilion sword light suddenly shot towards him. Swish. Wu Guike was initially not planning to use his weapon, but at this moment a heavy halberd appeared in his hand. His eyes turned gloomy as his profound aura erupted like volcano. Bang! An enormous sound resounded as if a huge balloon had blown up, and all the air in the surrounding several kilometers area was drained instantly. The sword and halberd had clashed with each other, and both the weapons were in deadlock in midair. Such a turn of events surprised everyone present, and Wu Guike even widened his eyes in disbelief. The divine martial realm had always disdained the use of elemental powers, and instead focused on cultivating the simplest and purest form of profound strength. The defensive ability of such a profound strength would be invulnerable to attack, and its offensive power extremely domineering. Every time a practitioner of such profound strength launched an attack, it would possess an extremely hard and fierce nature. Therefore, the one thing that one should avoid at all costs while fighting with someone from the divine martial realm was to face them head-on. Mu Bingyun had also warned Yuanqi about it. However, when Yuanqi and Wu Guike exchanged blows for the first time in this battle, they clashed in a straightforward manner, and it was also Yuanqi who took the initiative to attack. When everyone thought that Yuanqi attempting such a thing was no different from courting death, the outcome of the clash turned out to be something so unexpected that they were all dumbfounded. The two of them remained in a deadlock for a short period of time at the center of the conferred god stage, and surprisingly, no one could tell who had the upper hand. In other words, Yuanqi could actually fully withstand Wu Guike's hard and fierce profound strength win a direct confrontation. Wu Guike was far more shocked than anyone else. Just now, while feeling that impossible suffocation from his opponent, he had immediately used his whole strength to attack, without holding back in the least. Though this move of his would certainly be enough to deal a finishing blow to Yuanqi, but he never expected him to be able to completely block it, and not even retreat half a step while doing so. Furthermore, the huge backlash of his own power jolted his internal organs for a brief moment. But this was only his first sword attack. Yuanqi's expression didn't change in the least as he suddenly launched his second sword attack. Boom! Wu Guike's whole body shook intensely, and his arm went numb in an instant. In the face of Wu Guike's hard and fierce energy, Yuanqi should have only been able to launch his attacks at a very slow speed. But he had been bestowed Buddha Heart Divine Veins by Mu Xuanian herself, and so he was able to channel and circulate his profound energy at a very fast speed. Wu Guike still didn't get the chance to gasp for breath when he saw Yuanqi launching his third sword attack. The force behind this attack was not the slightest bit weaker than the previous two. Wu Guike's pupils shrank all of a sudden. Boom, boom! The heavy halberd in Wu Guike's hand, which weighed at least 10 million kilograms, was smashed upon so heavily that it bent into the shape of a crescent moon, turning Wu Guike's face pale. He bent the upper half of his body backward to offset the force of the attack, but suddenly slid back a kilometer away in an instant, before his body finally came to a stop. His body swayed a bit as 3 streaks of blood flowed down from the corners of his mouth and nostrils. W.H. Wu Sanzan, the divine martial realm king, stood up suddenly with face full of shock. In the audience seating area, countless people opened their mouths wide and forgot to close them for a long while. But in this instant, Yuanqi had already launched his fourth sword attack. Despite the fact that there was an energy barrier between the contestants and the audience, they could still clearly feel the boundless might of his sword attack, which had as much force as an ocean turning over. If they were not witnessing all this with their own eyes, it would have been impossible for them to believe that a young, profound practitioner with a cultivation at only the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm could have such incredible strength. No matter what anyone said, Wu Guike raised his head. He suddenly gritted his teeth as a blast of aura surged from his body and generated a bizarre divine martial law. Martial confining sky domain. Following Wu Guike's low roar, the aura over the conferred god stage twisted all of a sudden. Yuanqi's movements stagnated in midair, and he felt as if he had fallen into a viscous swamp. An incomparably domineering field of aura was violently suppressing his body and profound strength, causing his aura to plummet and be caged in a prison. "Oh no," Mu Bingyun cried out in a low voice. Wu Guike breathed heavily as a trace of a twisted and sinister smile appeared on his face. Holding his heavy halberd horizontally, he charged straight ahead to stab through Yuanqi. Yuanqi had a chilly gaze at this moment. Under the effects of the martial confining sky domain, his movements had clearly become a lot slower, but his heaven-smiting sword suddenly shone with eye-catching blue light. Ding, 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 ding. Amidst the incomparably concentrated but particularly pleasant-sounding notes, the eye-catching blue light spread at a fast rate and filled each and every corner of the martial confining sky domain in the blink of an eye. The originally colorless suppression domain had now turned a deep ice blue color. Ping! In the next instant, as if a star had burst apart, the fragments of the ice blue domain filled the whole sky, which naturally meant that the martial confining sky domain had been thoroughly destroyed. Due to the reason that the domain was linked with the aura of his body, the more severe damage it received, the greater backlash he had to suffer. Wu Guike was rushing at Yuanqi with all his power focused on his next attack, when his body shook intensely as if he had been struck heavily by something, and all the profound energy he had accumulated for his attack dispersed in no time. Blood gushed out of his mouth as a storm hit him ruthlessly. Bang! When Yuanqi's sword smashed firmly onto his body, Wu Guike's right rib immediately caved in and he was ruthlessly blown away. His body flew 10-odd kilometers to the back before it smashed onto the ground and slid several kilometers along the ground. The audience seating area became so deathly silent that even the sound of a pin dropping on the ground could be heard clearly. Cough, cough, cough. Wu Guike turned over as blood crazily gushed out of his mouth. In the sky above him, that nightmarish force was drawing closer once again, as if it didn't wish to give him a chance to even gasp for breath. Crack, crack, crack. Wu Guike's entire skeleton made loud noises as profound energy surged from him again. He raised his heavy halberd to meet the attack of his opponent. Boom. When the sword and halberd clashed once more, the veins in Wu Guike's eyes became clearly visible due to the impact that his body had experienced. He barely withstood the attack, but the shock generated from the clash caused a large amount of blood to crazily surge out of the 7 apertures of his head at the same time. Boom! After the second sword attack, Wu Guike's arms lost all sensation. Blue veins popped out across his body as the heavy halberd slipped out of his hand and flew away. Bang! After the third sword attack, the last of the profound strength protecting Wu Guike's body smashed into pieces like a broken eggshell. His body flew away, resembling a mushy piece of meat as it smashed into the edge of the conferred god barrier. Guike, Wu Guike's whole body twitched as he struggled to lift his arms up. His pupils were continuously shrinking in fear as if he had had the most preposterous, nightmarish experience just now. However, after a few breaths of struggle, his arms eventually dropped down and moved no longer. Honorable Kui's spirit sense swept over Wu Guike. His chest visibly heaved before he made the announcement, "Wu Guike has passed out and will no longer be part of the conferred god battle. Yuanqi has won. He will participate in the 4th round of the losers group tomorrow." Honorable Kui had announced the result, but no cheers or uproar could be heard in response from the audience. Instead, everyone remained deathly silent for a long time. Everyone from the Snow Song realm, be it the elders or the disciples, had their eyeballs bulging out in shock, while those from the divine martial realm could only stare blankly ahead for a long while. Each of the great realm kings couldn't help but reveal surprise in their eyes, too. Junzile raised her sword-like brows sideways. Shui Yingyu was in a slightly absent-minded state. Shui Meiyan had her hand on her tender lips as light repeatedly flashed in her beautiful eyes, and even Luo Changsheng also had his gaze fixed on Yuanqi for a long time. Wu Guike was a heaven-favored person at the 8th level of the divine spirit realm. On the other hand, Yuanqi was only at the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm. There was a difference of an entire big realm between their profound strengths. Yuanqi thoroughly defeating Luo Chang'an the previous day had filled everyone with curiosity and expectation for his next battle. During this battle, they were looking forward to a similar miracle happening again somewhere deep in their hearts. But such thoughts only belonged to their subconscious minds in the end. There was basically no one who truly believed that he could win against Wu Guike. It was because Wu Guike was nothing like Luo Chang'an. Yuanqi obtaining victory over Luo Chang'an was already enough to startle the Eastern Divine Region. As for surpassing someone a great realm higher in cultivation, it was something that had never happened in the history of the God realm, and the probability of it happening in reality was simply impossible, too. Even Shui Meiyan would not be able to accomplish such a thing besides. She relied on her soul power, not profound strength. But Yuanqi had not only won against his opponent, he used merely 7 sword attacks to achieve victory. I dreaming or what? Yuanqi won against Wu Guike. SSS, not only did he win, but he also thoroughly crushed him in a frontal confrontation. Is Yuanqi's profound strength truly at the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm? No, isn't that impossible? How could it be true? Everyone present at the conferred God stage, as well as in the whole Eastern Divine Region, were startled by what they had witnessed. Numerous people were already totally shocked when they had witnessed Yuanqi skewering Luo Chang'an on an icy thorn the previous day. But the visual and soul impact of this battle was countless times greater. Even those supreme experts, who looked down upon all living creatures under heavens, couldn't help but be so taken aback that they didn't dare to believe their own eyes. It was because, according to the common sense of these experts who had lived for tens of thousands of years, it was absolutely impossible for such a thing to happen. No wonder that he was so certain of his victory, Mu Bingyun said in a low tone as she lightly pursed her lips. But soon, a look of hesitation surfaced on her snow-white face. Yuanqi had unleashed his full strength as soon as he got on the stage, beaten Wu Guike black and blue with 7 attacks of his sword, and even easily broken his divine martial domain. While it quite shocked everyone to witness all this happening, Mu Bingyun also keenly sensed that he was acting as if he was giving vent to something. Only some sort of provocation would make him vent his feelings like that. The cultivation of his profound strength is indeed at the 8th level of the divine tribulation realm, without a doubt. He is absolutely not faking it, the Moon God Emperor said with a slight frown. It is precisely the biggest reason that you can't help but feel surprise at his achievement. Your Majesty, has anyone similar to him appeared in your Western Divine Region? The Eternal Heaven Emperor asked. This God Emperor, who stood at the summit of the Eastern Divine Region with respect to profound strength, standing and prestige, had the depths of his pupils filled with surprise at this time, despite the fact that he had showed no more reaction than faintly smiling and praising the performances of monstrous existences like Luo Changsheng and Shui Meiyan. The Dragon Monarch shook his head slowly. There are precedents of profound practitioners of the divine soul realm defeating opponents in the divine tribulation realm, a great realm higher than them. However, a profound practitioner of the late stage of the divine tribulation realm defeating an opponent at the late stages of Death Even Spirit realm is something that has, at the least, never happened in my Western Divine Region. Furthermore, Yuanqi had thoroughly defeated his opponent. Not just that, Wu Guike was not an ordinary profound practitioner at the 8th level of the divine spirit realm. He was the son of the divine martial realm king, and it wouldn't be wrong to call him practically unrivaled against the people at his level of profound strength. Tusk, tusk, tusk. Kang Shishin had his chin held between his thumb and finger. There was an unprecedented look of surprise in his eyes. This king was just making a passing remark when I said that I could accept him as my disciple. It was basically a joke. But who would have thought that he was so capable? Eternal Heaven God Emperor, given how you found so many things wrong with this boy earlier, you certainly wouldn't object to me bringing him back to the Southern Divine Region, right? Ha, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor laughed faintly. Although he is from the lower realms, he belongs to the Snow Song realm of my Eastern Divine Region right now. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for you to take him away? How could a mere Snow Song realm deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as this king? So long as this king asks him to come, how is it possible for him to refuse? God Emperor Shishin laughed loudly. HMPH. An unpleasant look emerged on the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's face. Since he has joined a star realm of my Eastern Divine Region, he is now a person of the Eastern Divine Region. Even if this old man agrees to you taking him away, I don't think the people of the Eastern Divine Region would agree to it. Heh! God Emperor Shishin let out a strange laugh. He didn't say another word, but his eyes narrowed little by little. The Dragon Monarch shifted his gaze a bit sideways as a faint smile appeared on his face for some reason. Far off in the sky above, an old person said in mild voice as he drifted in the air. a profound practitioner at the late stages of the divine tribulation realm, defeating an opponent at the late stage of divine spirit realm in a frontal confrontation. In vain did this old man live for 120,000 years to only now be able to see such an unimaginable miracle. The voice of the old person was dry, hoarse, and flat, but everyone who knew of his existence would be clear about the extremely great significance behind such a comment from him. If any one of them heard him saying that he had lived 120,000 years in vain, they would only treat it as a joke. Then, have you figured how he was able to have such strength at his current level? Xianxia asked. She reacted in a much calmer manner than the old person when Huanzhi had won the battle. I don't know, but Miss seems to have the right answer. Let's continue to watch him. Xianxia's blonde hair blew in the wind, as she said in a frivolous and bored voice. Right now, I'm as interested in him as in the world-defying heavenly manual. The old person remained silent for a long while before he spoke. It seems that there is something unusual about the aura of his sword. Sword? Xianxia slightly knitted her brows. All kinds of divine and heavenly weapons have been used on the conferred God stage. The aura of his sword is at the bottom level among them, so how could there be anything unusual about it? I don't know. It's just that I sense something unusual about it for some unknown reason. The old man's gaze was locked onto Huanzhi. Although Wu Guike's divine martial domain had been unleashed in a hurry after he had suffered injuries, Huanzhi was able to smash it to pieces in 2 breaths' time. This point alone proves that Huanzhi's strength is far above Wu Guike. There was only a slight disorder in his aura when the battle was over, which means that his true strength is much greater than what he has displayed just now. Uncle Gu, what is the ultimate limit of his strength in your opinion? Xianxia asked. Above Meng Duengxi but below Lu Lengquan, the old person replied in a slow voice. Perhaps his strength is already not that far from Lu Lengquan's. The old person only gave a brief answer, but it showed that he had an incomparably accurate estimation of Huanzhi's limit. Not that far from Lu Lengquan's strength? A slightly serious look appeared in Xianxia's eyes. It was evident that she was unable to believe his words. If he can make up for the inferiority of possessing a lower-level weapon and also possesses other extraordinary moves, he might be able to put up a fight against Lu Lengquan. But it would be absolutely impossible for him to win. If he meets other people in the losers group, he would be able to win against them all, but if he had to fight Lu Lengquan, he would not be able to advance further in the conferred God battle. Each and every word of Uncle Gu was hoarse and indistinct, and sounded as if it was the heavens making an adjudication. Wu Guike had gotten severely injured and passed out, and was thus hurriedly carried away by the people from the divine martial realm. The eyes of the 2 elders that were carrying Wu Guike not only contained anger and chilliness within them as they looked at Huanzhi, but there was also a look of surprise that didn't disappear even after a long while. Meiyin, your words were indeed correct, Shui Yingyu said slowly. He is already receiving the greatest attention in the profound God convention after this battle. That is actually not the case. Shui Meiyin's eyes continuously flashed with bright light, as if there were stars within them. Even I didn't think that he would turn out to be so powerful. While the audience was dumbfounded or looking at him surprised, Huanzhi left the conferred God stage. But instead of returning to the seating area of the Snow Song realm, he flew away into the sky. Palace Master Bingyun, I'm going to take a look at Huo Poyun. I will have to trouble you to receive the time Wheel Pearl in my place. He was no longer in the mood to watch the remaining 3 battles of the losers group, and there was no need to do so either. As soon as he got out of the area of the conferred God stage, Huanzhi increased his speed as he rushed straight towards the residence of the Flame God realm. As Huo Poyun had constantly performed extraordinarily in the profound God convention, the residents of the Flame God realm always had a lively atmosphere. But on this day, Huanzhi sensed a gloomy atmosphere from it as he drew closer. Although Huo Poyun had a blank expression on his face, his injuries had fully healed at this time. It was obvious that Huo Ruli had treated his injuries inside the barrier that was formed by the Time Wheel Pearl. But the damage his mind had suffered was much more severe compared to his physical injuries. He was leaning against the side of a thick tree at the corner of the courtyard, and his eyes were staring blankly ahead as if he had lost his soul. There were many people around him, like Huo Ruli and all the elders and disciples of the Golden Crow Sect. Every one of them had a worried look on their faces. Huo Ruli's eyes brightened upon catching sight of Huanzhi. He promptly rushed over and pulled him to his side, as he said in a low voice, Young Yun, you came at the right time. It might be better if you were to comfort him, sigh. Yun Qi nodded his head and walked over to Huo Poyun's side. Huo Poyun raised his head as he sensed Yun Qi's aura. He said with an extremely forced smile on his face, "Brother Yun, I'm sorry to show you my disgraceful performance. Don't worry, I'm all right." As he approached Huo Poyun, Yun Qi clearly felt a thick and depressing atmosphere around him. It was as if a thick and heavy layer of murky gray smoke had completely covered his mind, and it didn't show any signs of dispersing anytime soon. Yun Qi crouched down and stayed that way for a long while before he said in a slow voice, "Brother Poyun, do you still remember those words that I told in the early morning, that Junzile would take out her hatred on you because of the friendly relationship between us? That sword attack of her was absolutely not a casual move. Instead, it was an extremely high-level sword intent that was deliberately employed by her. It is very likely that the moment she got on the conferred god stage, she used the maximum limit of her energy in order to end the battle in such a manner. What difference does it make whether your speculation is true or not?" Huo Poyun let out a sad laugh. "In the end, all she needed to defeat me was just one sword move, one sword. I knew that I was going to lose. Therefore, I had planned to not hold back in the least, and to fully reveal the true form of the Golden Crow, flame to the people of the Eastern Divine Region. I thought that I would be able to hold on until the 20th clash of our attacks, and even if worse came to worse, withstanding 10 attacks should not have been an issue at all. But, Huo Poyun clenched his hands so tightly that the area around the joints of his fingers turned pale, and he found himself unable to speak any further. Huo Poyun was definitely not someone who couldn't accept a defeat, and was even completely prepared to lose the battle. But he had to suffer a crushing defeat just after one sword move of Junzile. That sword attack not only shattered his flame, it heavily injured his body, shattering his belief and pride. "Brother Poyun," Yun Qi raised his brows, "have you begun to doubt that the Golden Crow flame that you have always been so proud of is not as powerful as you always thought it to be?" Not that far from them, Huo Ruli suddenly turned around when he heard Yun Qi's words, as various emotions fluctuated in his eyes. Yun Qi's words were a heavy blow to Huo Poyun's soul. He lowered his head and let out a heavy breath. "I was born in the flame god realm and possessed far greater talent than others. I have received praises throughout my life and was fortunately accepted as a direct disciple by Master. I even obtained the favor of the Golden Crow Divine Spirit, and it bestowed me the ultimate Golden Crow bloodline. Yun Qi, I deeply thought of all these things to be my pride. Since the time I was young, I always believed that the Golden Crow flame possessed the most powerful energy in the world. When I obtained the favor of the Golden Crow Divine Spirit, I even more firmly believed, and Master told me as well, that I had the purest and the strongest power of Golden Crow flame in the history of the Flame God realm. But I couldn't withstand even a single attack from Junzile. I wasn't able to so much as block her move. His deep pride for his energy and bloodline was so deeply rooted in him that it had already become his faith in life. The thing that had dealt a heavy blow to Huo Poyun wasn't his defeat, but the collapse of his faith. Junzile is not an ordinary person," Yun Qi said in a light voice. "Her profound strength is, after all, 3 small realms higher than you. When facing the suppression of profound strength, profound arts are unable to make up for the difference most of the time, no matter how powerful they are. Furthermore, you leave the Flame God realm on extremely few occasions, and hence shouldn't have any experience fighting with a true expert in the way of the sword. This is the biggest reason behind you getting defeated in such a manner." Huo Poyun shook his head and let out a forced laugh again. "Brother Yun, you don't have to comfort me like this. I know that it is disappointing for me to be so dejected. Don't worry. It's just that I'm unable to convince myself for the time being. Give me time, I'll get better soon." "I was in fact never worried about you," Yun Qi said with a faint smile. "Brother Poyun, you actually don't need to criticize yourself because of your current condition or feel ashamed of it. After all, we aren't like those old people who have lived for several thousand or tens of thousands of years and have seen and experienced countless changes in the world. It has been no more than 30 years since we came into this world, and we haven't even gotten the opportunity to see it clearly. How is it possible for us to not be bewildered about various things from time to time?" Huo Poyun raised his head slightly. "Brother Yun, have you also been in such a state?" "Of course." Yun Qi nodded his head as the look in his eyes turned deep and serene. Moreover, it has already happened on several occasions, with the latest being a few years ago. When I was still in the lower realm, I came across someone that I was completely unable to win against, no matter how hard I tried. He was not just an opponent like Huanzhi and others, but a mortal enemy of mine. If I couldn't win against him, not only I, but my wife, my family members, all the people by my side would have faced the most fearsome calamity in their lives. Yuanqi was naturally talking about Xuanyuan Wenshan. I was in an extremely depressed state during that time and passed my days muddle-headed. Every thought within my mind was full of gloominess and despair, and I was in a much more miserable condition than you. However, I succeeded in getting rid of such a mindset in less than half a month. A relaxed smile appeared on Yuanqi's face. If I can do it, then it should naturally be even easier for Brother Poyun to do the same. Moreover, I don't consider it a bad thing, as every time you get rid of such negative emotions, you'll be able to undergo a growth process, and might even be able to transform completely. If we don't experience such bewilderment at this young age, I feel that it will become a shortcoming in your life instead. Therefore, Brother Poyun truly doesn't need to care about his present condition, or to forcibly attempt to get her better as soon as possible. It will be fine so long as you listen and follow what your heart says. Hu Poyun's eyes quivered as the depressed look on his face smoothed out without him realizing. "Brother Yun, thank you very much," he said with a smile that was not forced like the one from earlier. Teardrops glittered in his eyes as he said smilingly, "It is truly great that I was able to get to know you in this life. I think that same about you." Yuanqi also smiled, "But there is no need to thank me. We are friends, right?" "Amen, we are." Hu Poyun nodded his head heavily. Hu Ruli fixedly looked at the two young people. Although Hu Poyun had still not completely gotten out of his depression, there was a noticeable change in his mental state. Most of the worry in his heart disappeared, as he felt endless gratitude towards Yuanqi once more.